All right. I call to order the Gladstone City Council meeting for October 8th, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. Hello, everybody, and I hope you're enjoying this weather change as much as I am. It must be fall. Normally I say a holiday for today, and the only one that was interesting was Fluffernutter Day, and since I don't know what that is, I'm going to go with tomorrow is Bullying Prevention Day. With rampant bullying happening at every level, it's targeting our children, brothers, sisters, parents, friends, and leaders. It's time that we all stand together and let the bullies know that this is not going to be tolerated anymore. And I challenge everyone that's sitting here to go out and make a difference, hold people up, and hold those accountable that are tearing people down. So, tonight we will start with the swearing in of Police Lieutenant Timothy Gerkman and Police Sergeant James Leake, followed by a presentation by Columbia Restoration on the Rainierson Creek project. Our consent agenda includes approval of the September 10th, 2019 regular meeting minutes, approval of the August bank balances, budget report for period ending August 30th, 2019, approval of the August check register, legal costs on projects, department head monthly reports for September 2019, and approval to extend the library director services. Our regular meeting agenda includes Resolution 1165, support of a co-sponsored application with Clackamas County redesignating the North Urban Clackamas County Enterprise Zone, Ordinance 1497, adding Chapter 5.55 to the Gladstone Municipal Code, also called the GMC, titled Business Food Waste Requirements, Resolution 1166, declaring funds received as assigned fund balance for the Gladstone Public Library within the general fund of the city, Ordinance 1498, amending Title 17 of the Gladstone Municipal Code, again the GMC, pertaining to time limit extensions of land use approvals, direction on utility rates for January 2020 implementation, and discussion of the right-of-way, also referred to as the ROW, information. And I would also like to mention that we do have an item on business carried forward, which is an update on the library intergovernmental agreement called the IGA with Clackamas County. Tammy, could you please call the roll? Councilor Ripley?
Here.
Councilor Neese?
Present.
Councilor Tracy?
Present.
Councilor Reisner?
Here.
Councilor Todd?
Here.
Councilor Mercero?
Here.
Mayor Stemple? Here. Could everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We are going to start with our first presentation, which is swearing in of Police Lieutenant Timothy Gerkman and Police Sergeant James Leake by Municipal Judge Linda Balloof. And
So if I could have Timothy Gerkman come forward first. If you want to do so you can follow along. Good thing you don't. Raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, Timothy Gerkman.
I, Timothy Gerkman,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and of the State of Oregon
and of the State of Oregon
and the Charter and Municipal Code
and the Charter and Municipal Code
of the City of Gladstone,
of the City of Gladstone,
and that I will,
and that I will,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
perform the duties
perform the duties
of Police Lieutenant
of Police Lieutenant
for the City of Gladstone, Oregon,
for the City of Gladstone, Oregon,
during my entire term of employment,
during my entire term of employment,
so help me God.
so help me God.
You have been sworn, so Dennis.
Thank you very much.
And I will sign these in just a moment. And I'll have you stand over here, this can be a badging in just a moment. Can I have James Leake? Now let me follow along. Others and thanks probably Tammy for for that. I, James Leake,
I, James Lee,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and of the State of Oregon
and of the State of Oregon
and the Charter and Municipal Code
and the Charter and Municipal Code
of the City of Gladstone,
of the City of Gladstone,
and that I will, to the best of my ability, perform the duties of police sergeant for the city of Gladstone, Oregon, during my entire term of employment, so help me God. And I will go ahead and sign these.
While these are being signed, the badge is the most recognizable symbol of policing. It's a sign of authority and sacrifice. It's most importantly, it's a sign of service. It's also a reminder, stay true to your oath. We're very excited to have both Lieutenant Gerkman and Sergeant Lee be part of the Gladstone Police Department family. And at this point, as tradition holds, you always have a family member or a loved one pin your badge on. Who would you like to come up and pin your badge on?
Both my son and daughter are going to come up, and my daughter's taking us to
Remember, guys. Lieutenant Gerkman, who would you like to have on your badge?
Have my son Brian, who's a deputy sheriff in the county.
Oh, just, you know it's gonna hurt. It's gonna mess.
So James, you need to sign two. This two or two? Sign both. Congratulations, Sophia.
Thank you.
And Tammy, you can
Welcome, Lieutenant Sergeant. Hi, sir.
If you don't mind me asking, we have a whole lot of officers in the room. I'm assuming that's what they were here for. Which jurisdictions or departments do you guys represent? Gresham. Milwaukee. Multnomah County. Thank you very much for coming. Everybody bails.
Yep.
Wow, I thought we were going to have a major meeting tonight.
Less people to shoot us now.
Is anybody going to stay? Is anybody sort of, protection?
Yeah, for friends, it's good to have a few guns. In case somebody pushes the button.
As soon as everybody leaves, I'll announce you guys. There's like a traffic jam in the hall.
Understood.
A good traffic jam, though.
Yeah, it gets kind of scary when we have so many officers in one room. Well, we'll go ahead. All right, the next item is the Rennerson Creek Project presentation by Columbia Restoration.
Good evening. I'm Evan Aquatree with Columbia Restoration, and this is Gary Howard. We're here to present on the Portland Harbor Narda Restoration Project. That is a public-private partnership between Columbia Restoration Group and the City of Gladstone, as well as some additional private homeowners and property owners throughout the area here. So, get started here, kind of show you the project location. Obviously, it's the Meldrum Bar Park, located right there on the Willamette River. I'll let Gary speak to some of the kind of conditions pre-restoration that you see here.
So pre-restoration, lots of invasive species. There was a dam built a number of years ago to offset the impacts, wetland impacts for the Toyota dealership that's on the road there. So the project took the dam out and rebuilt the channel, and rebuilt the pond above it for fish passage, and also for a number of species that were listed in the Portland Harbor project. And so this was pre-restoration photographs. The pond was in a very shallow, warm condition. The fish couldn't get up. There was about an 18-foot drop from the concrete dam down to the creek, so there was absolutely no fish passage. And the channels down below would fill up with logs, and the floodplain was pretty degraded. Lots of blackberries. Blackberries were like 10 feet tall. It was pretty amazing. There's another pre-construction photo. One more. Yep. So to start the project, we did a fish salvage and turtle salvage. The turtles, we went in and got, Bill, 18 turtles? Is that what it was? 18 turtles, I think. I can't remember, 18 or 13. And Susan Barnes with ODF&W was kind enough to babysit them all summer while we worked on the project. And this project ended up taking 2 seasons. This was a couple years ago when in October we had the 3 inches of rain in an hour. And Reinerson Creek drains 12 square miles of paving. And when it came, it was done for the year. It was pretty amazing. We were all standing out there going, what is that noise? And it was 6 feet of water coming down Reinerson Creek.
Wow. So
the first picture was the first year's fish salvage. You can see how bad the pond was. I mean, it was just covered in moss, hot, fish couldn't live. The next picture was the second year, which was kind of fun since everybody was buried up to their elbows in mud. We actually collected 136 native coho smolts out of year 2.
Wow.
Because we had constructed the creek already, so they could get to that half of the pond. That was a big surprise for everybody because the dam had been in place for years and no salmon could get up there. So to collect that many was great. We got them back down into the Willamette, and that was a really nice bonus that we got. These are construction photos. That is Meldrum Bar out behind you. This is the island and the channel. We moved about 26,000 yards of material and made floodplain. Kept it all on site. On the east side of the park, there had been an old gravel pit, and we filled that back in, basically. And so we were keep everything on site. The photo on the right is the channel going out to Meldrum Bar, and we basically took 12 feet off and did floodplains and reestablished floodplains that used to be there. Photo on the left is the hardened channel, and you can see water standing in it. That's what's out there now. You can hardly see it now because the willows are like 12 feet tall, which is by design, so it keeps the water cool. And so that's where the creek flows down through that hardened channel. Right side, that's digging the pond going north where you saw the guys doing the fish salvage. This is the completed restoration. Basically, the red zones on the left are new floodplain, lots of planting. There was 110,000 native plants put back in here.
How many?
110,000.
Wow.
It's the entire site is going to be it's going to be a challenge for the next 10 years. We'll be around for 10 years working on invasives. I mean, it's blackberries and it's ivy and it's a constant battle. But the park site is in much better state than it was. You can actually get around, and now the natives are growing up, and like I say, the willows and some of the trees are 10, 12 feet tall from the first year of planting, and it's really a nice site. There's a great interpretive walk that goes out to a couple areas, and it's really a nice restoration site. So that is post-construction. On the left, that's the new floodplains that were cut out to Meldon Bar Park there. And on the right is the creek running in its channel. There's about 6.5 feet of rock in that creek channel at a grade that the fish can get up and down, and so they don't have more than a 6-inch jump. And it's working quite well. There's a lot of large weight debris, that kind of stuff in there. We built some beaver condos, essentially, and they've moved in greatly on the upper end. And then we have 15 mink condos, but the mink live in the wood piles. They don't like the mink condos out of rock. But there's lots of different, features out there for different animals. There's deer, there's coyotes. There was river otters in there last week having a great time. Bald eagles. So it's really a nice site. It's really come around well. So.
Any questions or comments that y'all may have in regards to the project?
I took a tour of it last year,
Mhm.
and it was fantastic, and I was really impressed. So keep
Yeah.
up the good work.
And please continue to go out there and visit. Like Gary said, there's a there's a nice walking trail throughout there that you can kind of go to and overlook and see the pond and so forth. That will continue to be there. Part of the planning was to kind of discourage public access around the corner there. So as the plants grow older and mature, that will hopefully prevent a lot of access issues that we had in the past.
We might want to set up a tour and bring the rest of the council so they can come see it.
That would be great.
You've done a
Absolutely.
fabulous job on it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Evan,
I've built
can-
almost 100 projects, and this is one of my best ones,
Yep.
favorites. It was amazing to find all those smolts last year. It was like, wow, okay, it's working.
So can you update the council a little bit on the selling of mitigation credits?
Yes.
And the status?
Yeah, so part of this project is again part of the Portland Harbor NARDA Superfund cleanup, and that is what we generate DSA credits. We were able to generate out of this as we continue through our credit release process, we'll 345 credits.
Wow.
And we have our first initial releases, which generated about 170 credits, of which we sold 100 of those to a potentially responsible party that is, part of the trustee council that's overseeing the entire cleanup and restoration of the Portland Harbor Superfund. And so we continue to hopefully we have a couple other folks that we're talking to right now. Actually had a meeting this morning to discuss some future PRPs that are coming to the table now as the trustee council is going through the phases. They're getting closer to the liability perspective and consent decrees with the Department of Justice that will really finalize the PRPs and who's going to be responsible for what amount. And so we anticipate a lot of that kind of unfolding here in the fourth quarter, first of 2020. And so, we anticipate that we'll probably sell out of our initial release here first quarter of next year, and then kind of wait for our second release in the coming years.
I was involved in the early stages when there was really just being talked about,
Mm-hmm.
and I went with a tour with Councilor Neese here a few months ago, and I was amazed how much difference, how much the change was.
Yep.
And it looks like it's gone a lot more now.
Yeah,
Lots of
the
hard
year,
work.
the first year, obviously, the success as the plants mature will get just even better. So, as long as we maintain it and keep the invasives out, then we hope to see continued success.
Looks like you've done a super job.
Well, thank you very much.
How far out is the maintenance plan for this?
So we have a 10-year maintenance. That's just from our perspective, and then it goes into a long-term stewardship, which is the
Okay.
trustee council, and so in perpetuity, it will always be maintained and overseen and taken care of.
But that first chunk is when plants get wiped out and...
Exactly. The success criteria is very heavy in the first couple of years as they mature.
And we've had a few issues like the beavers, which they like. Enjoy all the willows we planted.
They can eat all the nettles, that's fine with me.
Yeah.
They can
Yeah.
steer them that direction.
I mean, you learn things on these projects, like down on those floodplains. we use stakes. When the beavers come in that heavy, they just pull the stakes clear out of the ground, where in nature they chew them off and it makes tin. So we've got some areas we've got to replant and stuff, but it's all learning. Each site's so different, and I don't know how many beavers are living out there, but it's a bunch. Like, they have moved in, and that's what they want. It's some of the best fish rearing habitat there is. 'Cause that's
They
the
just
entire site's
naturalized.
flooded. Yep.
They didn't.
Yep, we didn't move anybody in. We built it and they came, and that's what they wanted. They, you know, and it's been a good success in that regard.
Wonderful. Any more questions?
I just wanted to remind the council that we did enter into an agreement, Rynearson Natural Area LLC in 2014. Even though Falling Springs is no longer part of this and they've taken over, that agreement is still in place. So once they have sold enough mitigation credits to cover their costs associated with the project and to set up the stewardship amount, the city is in a position to recover some of the costs they incurred as well. I believe it's up to $44,000 for some studies and $10,000 for legal. So we'll keep you updated as they sell their credits.
All right.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Have a good night.
Yeah. That's what we're hoping.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Are there any agenda additions or corrections?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would like to add 3 items under business carried forward. One is to clarify city committee positions, specifically to the Planning Commission and Library open positions. The second is the city administrator employment agreement. And the third is the judge's contract.
All right. Is everybody okay with that? All right. So next is the consent agenda. Any discussion? Would someone like to make a motion then?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion was made by Counselor Tracy and seconded by Counselor Neese. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda passed. Is there any correspondence?
We have one item on your dais. It was in regards to utility rates, and I emailed it to you earlier, but we also wanted to make sure it got here tonight in the record.
Alrighty. Okay, so a couple of things before we start. First, for those folks that would like to speak, please fill out the yellow cards on the black table by the door. We have general business from the audience at the end of the meeting, but we also have public comment during each of the agenda items. So when you fill out the yellow card, please indicate when you would like to speak and we will call you up at the appropriate time. And I'd like to have those filled out as soon as possible so that there isn't any hiccups in the meeting. And as a reminder, we allow 3 minutes for public comments unless there's special circumstances and additional time has been approved beforehand. Second, I would like to say a few words regarding the City Council. The most important limitation we have sitting here is that we are representing the citizens of Gladstone, not our own personal agendas and beliefs. There have been many times when a decision being made doesn't align with what we would like personally, but we've made a decision based on what is best for the city as a whole. That doesn't mean our personal beliefs have changed, just that the city's needs were more important. As we discuss and consider matters, there are laws and rules we have to use as the basis of our decisions. These start at the federal and state level, then filter down to our city's comprehensive plan, city charter, codes, and ordinances. We do not have the luxury of randomly making decisions, but instead we have to be consistent and take a path that's defensible. I wanted you to know we appreciate you taking the time to come here and participating in this process. In order to be respectful, please turn your cell phones on silent and keep your side discussions to a minimum. If you are unable to do so, I will stop the meeting until you're done. That way, those that want to hear what is going on are able to do so. My goal is to keep this meeting respectful and engaging, and I hope you all can help us do that. Thank you. First item, well, before on the, we've had some issues with me not knowing who needs to speak on items. So Matt and I go to quite a few meetings regionally, and they all use this tent card option. So when you want to speak, just do this. I just want to make sure that I don't miss anybody wanting to speak, and I want to make sure that everybody has the chance without being interrupted. So we're just trying this tonight. Hopefully this will work. If not, we'll try something else. Again, I just want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity. All right, so first item, number 8, Resolution 1165, support of a co-sponsored application with Clackamas County redesignating the North Urban Clackamas County Enterprise Zone. Staff.
Thank you, Mayor. So this request actually is from Clackamas County for the City of Gladstone to participate in what's called an enterprise zone, which really is a tax abatement program for businesses looking to locate or expand in a designated area. Typically, you see these types of programs in industrial undeveloped areas. However, Clackamas County needed to include some eligible census block groups in order to fit the definition in their application. And so in your packet what you have is a brief explanation of what the enterprise zone process is. It's a very complex process that a qualified property would need to meet with Clackamas County to determine if they were going to meet the criteria for qualifying for projects. And I just kind of, for the audience, want to talk a little bit about what that is. But basically, it's tax abatement on local property taxes on new investments, including building construction improvements, machinery and equipment for a period of 3 to 5 years. And they have to meet some full-time permanent employment requirements. They have to maintain minimum employment level during an exemption period, and they have to enter into a first source agreement with the local job training providers. I honestly don't think that Gladstone's going to benefit a whole lot from this, but I also don't think it hurts Gladstone to participate with Clackamas County to do that. Most of our properties are built out in the industrial or commercial area, but if somebody was to buy property and tear it down and they were going to build a manufacturing plant or a processing plant that fit our zoning requirements, they could benefit excuse me, from a tax abatement for up to 3 years. The city would not be making that decision. The county would be taking the applicant through that process, but the city would also be part of having those conversations. Also wanted to make sure in your packet that we did a specific map tax lot so you knew what properties were going to be included. And on 8/20 it has a proposed North Urban Clackamas County Enterprise Zone. The City of Milwaukee did approve their properties to be included in it for us, and you will see on 8-19, it's really the pink areas there, east side of 82nd Drive, the SDA property, and then you have the west side of Portland Avenue and some on the east side, and then both sides of McLaughlin Avenue. That would be inside what's called the Enterprise Tax Abatement Program.
Any questions? Thank you. Councilor Reisner.
There's been discussion for several years of the City of Gladstone expanding and into some of the area north and northeast of the city. How would this affect that if we decided to pursue something like that?
So like if we wanted to annex property in the industrial area outside of the city,
yes,
then that would potentially mean in the future, if we wanted to redesignate an enterprise zone, we could capture more property in that. But what you're basically approving tonight is just these properties in here. But I think it's always good to talk about that because, you know, it's nice that Clackamas County included us in this application because Gladstone's never been asked before. And even though we may not benefit from it, it starts having the conversations that if we do annex future property into it, these are the types of incentives that you want to offer people to develop. So it will eventually increase our property tax base.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Counselor Tracy.
What's the average wage in the county, do we know?
I don't have that information.
Okay, so the compensation of the new workers to apply for the exemption, they have to be paid at 150% of the average wage.
That's
Is that
correct. Yes.
So the other question I have is, what will this do for some of the folks along McLaughlin? And I'm thinking of the car dealerships that are, a lot of them deploying capital right now. I mean, I think that pretty much every car dealership is either upgraded or is in the process of.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't necessarily be participating in this either, I would assume.
Now, it has to be new capital, new construction, and also can only be for manufacturers, processors, shippers, call centers, and traded sector businesses.
Okay, so that was limited to that and wasn't, because there was a cetera somewhere in there, so I wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions or comments? Do we have any public comment? All right, would someone like to make a motion then? Or have more discussion?
I'll make a motion, Mayor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I move that we approve staff's recommendation on entering in this, I move that we approve Resolution 1165, resolution supporting a co-sponsored application with the Clackamas County and the City of Gladstone redesignating the North Urban Clackamas County Enterprise Zone.
I'll
I
second it.
second that.
Motion was made by Counselor Reisner and tandemly seconded by Counselors Neese and Mercero. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Next item is number 9, Ordinance 1497, adding Chapter 5.55 to the GMC, titled Business Food Waste Requirements. Staff.
It's back by popular demand. It's back before you tonight. I wasn't present in May when you first considered it, but I did go back and watch and listen to the meeting, and since then been working a lot with Clackamas County and Metro staff to really understand what the City Council's concerns are regarding this. And just fundamentally, we don't like other government agencies mandating local jurisdictions. They understand that. And we also had concerns about what our garbage haulers' costs were going to be now that they were required to do this as well. So what we did was, in your packet, we filed first a letter of extension with Metro, asking for more time to work with our local businesses to better understand what does this really mean for Gladstone. Metro granted that extension and gave us until October to reconsider the ordinance. We also had a open house, which I believe all of you except Councilor Reisner was able to attend that. And we had Metro staff here, Clackamas County staff. We invited all the businesses again, and I put a copy of the letter in here so you had verification of that. And I also wanted to make sure you had a copy of all the businesses that were listed in here. I think what was the biggest takeaway that I got from that open house is that, yes, there are approximately 22 businesses in Gladstone that this would affect, but we also realize that most of them won't meet the minimum qualifications once Clackamas County goes out and does a site assessment. And the other takeaway was that we had, I think, 3 businesses that showed up. The one that's not meeting the minimum qualifications, they want to do it anyway. And so I hope that you share with me that it was actually a very educational open house for us to have. We got to see the types of containers that the businesses would need. We got to understand more about what kind of one-on-one assistance that they will get for this process. And we also understood that because Gladstone in this whole metro area has probably got the least amount of businesses that will be impacted by this. We have 2 in group 1, and basically what Metro is saying is that we could take the Group 1 and the Group 2 and not have to implement those until March of 2021 to do that. And then Group 3 would be in September of 2022. So, what you have before you tonight is the original ordinance for you to consider. I will share with you that I don't really know what happens if you don't approve it, except that I will lose, or the city will lose, the technical assistance funding that we currently receive. Metro allocates Clackamas County funds to do outreach on recycling and garbage, and we'll do all of these site visits, and it's approximately about $17,000 benefit to Gladstone. So if we don't approve this, we will not get any more funding from Metro, and we will still have to eventually do this for our businesses, which means that the city will have to figure out how to educate and promote this program. Other than that, I do believe that if you have any questions, I know Clackamas County's here, correct? And there's Pam, okay. And I got Gary and Pam, B&B Leasing as well. So we have everybody here tonight, but it is clearly at your discretion. I wanted to also let you know that if it is adopted, I'm not sure Oregon City is the only other city that has not yet, but that Metro and Clackamas County have put together an implementation timeline which Gladstone would participate in those conversations. We have time, we have a lot of time to phase this in, and we would come back to you with rate options. Do you want to bundle this? Do you only want it to be for commercial properties? And it's really about, I think they costed it out about a 20-cent increase to a commercial business to do this, and it won't affect the residential customers.
Right.
So wanted to make that clear as well. So other than that, you can open it up for questions.
All right. Does anyone have any questions? I do have one for our hauler, if you want to come up. You're on the hot seat. I just wanted everyone to hear what your take was on this program.
It's been decades that the legislature passed a law that to try to reduce the amount of trash that's going to landfills. So over that time, recycling, yard debris, diversion has occurred where we are doing that. And now food waste is another item that can be removed from what's going into our trash receptacles and can be used in other places other than the landfill. To us, it's just another service that we provide. We have the equipment, we can do it. It's the will of the council that will dictate to us should we or not.
I just want to make sure that it's not a huge
It's not
lift
an
for you
issue
guys.
for us. You know, we clean our trucks when we shift from trash to yard debris, from yard debris to recycling, or whichever way it goes. So we're already doing everything. It's just you know, a different mix of source separated collection.
And I think it's also helpful if you look at your last page on this item 918, because it specifically, we had concerns with what options does B&B have of where they could transfer. So I wanted you to see that Metro and Clackamas County provided answers on the different options of where they can transfer and that they can make that determination. And then they will also receive access payments to help subsidize some of those costs. So those two answers specifically, I think, would benefit what you're trying to get from Alan.
Yeah.
Okay. Councilor Tracy?
So I have a question for the city attorney, and maybe more of a statement. I think I'm going to recuse on this, and I would follow your counsel on accepting that, or you think that's a good idea, or I think I'd like to make it really clean, so.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, Chad Jacobs from the City Attorney's Office. There's two different aspects. There's a financial conflict of interest under state law, which would require recusal, and then there's just a recusal for the purposes of making the decision as clean as possible.
Yep.
This would fall into that latter category. Because Metro is a government entity, it's not deemed a business with which you are associated, so it doesn't create a conflict of interest for you to participate in this. So it's not a financial conflict under state law, but it would make the process cleaner for you to recuse yourself.
And I'll do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So any other questions? Or nope. All right. Thank you very much for coming. Oh,
Not for
okay.
him. Sorry. Thank you for coming, though.
Thank you. Councilor Reisner.
So I, a couple different questions, if I may. First, did the city attorney's office read through this and this proposed ordinance?
Yes, we have.
Okay. So then, question I have on page 9-7, under the business food waste requirements, 5.55.040, subsection 7, I guess, would be, talks about violations and a written citation. So if go through our other ordinances, primarily like parks, if there's violations, there's a particular level. So under ORSs, there's A, B, C, and D. Correct?
Well, it depends on what kind of law you're talking about and what type of violations. There's all different types of, whether it's criminal versus civil, and, depending on it's a misdemeanor or a violation, and so
Okay.
the answer is yes, but it depends.
So what's this? What's this?
I believe these are civil violations as I understand it. So these would be civil violations of the city code. This is not going to be a criminal violation.
Okay, so, but it says citation will be written. Wouldn't
Yeah.
that make it a criminal?
No, it does not. So just like you've got other sort of code enforcement issues where you're enforcing the law civilly through a citation, you can do a citation for a civil matter, just as you could a criminal. The citation doesn't dictate whether it's criminal or civil. It's what the underlying law is. And this is a civil law. It's not a criminal law.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure, a land use matter. So you've got someone who's using their property in violation of the land use code. We would issue a citation and do a code enforcement action related to that violation and go through the code enforcement process for that, but that would be a civil process as opposed to a criminal process.
Okay. And that would be handled through your office versus the city prosecutor?
No. Typically, it would be handled by city staff, would do the code enforcement action, and then either our office would assist them as necessary. Under state law, unless the entity being cited has an attorney, the city can't have an attorney represent it in municipal court.
Okay.
And our code compliance officer, and Chief Schmerber's here, he can correct me if I'm wrong, has met to understand more of what his involvement would be if the city did approve this ordinance.
Yeah, and I was, we didn't get really a chance to look at the ordinance itself when it came forward before. So earlier in the ordinance, under 5.55.030 on page 9-5, number 1 says this ordinance applies to all businesses. And then 2, it goes on to business subject to business food. Is that really necessary to say that it applies to all businesses? Because I don't think it would apply to Councilor Todd's.
Probably not.
Where are you specifically referencing? I'm sorry.
So page 9-5,
Okay.
5.55.030, number 1.
And I believe this is Metro's model ordinance.
It is, and I would just point you to 5.55020, which defines business.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be limited to those businesses that cook, assemble, process, serve, or sell food, or do so as a service providers for other enterprises.
Okay, so it's not every business in the city.
Correct.
Just those businesses that fall under the definition above.
Right.
Okay.
Metro also has a waiver guideline for businesses who have extraordinary circumstances. It's 510-4065. And so we would also have an opportunity to have a waiver process for certain businesses that may qualify.
Any other questions? Do we have any public comments?
We do not.
I have to say, I was really expecting that the community outreach to be very contentious, and it wasn't at all. I was very pleasantly surprised. Councilor Mercero?
I was just gonna ask, our city administrator, do you see the staff time growing from this?
No, not at all. I don't. And I think that, again, and we don't like it when we're told what to do with this, but I do look at it as more of an opportunity to educate businesses. And I think what we're going to find is that, one, there's not very many in Gladstone that meet the requirements, but again, there are some that want to scrape in a different bucket than their garbage goes, and we should allow them the opportunity to make that decision.
I wasn't too fond of this in the beginning, but I can see some merits of it, and I don't think it's going to, I was concerned it was going to affect everybody, and I think it's going to be really minimal, actually. And if people want to do it, so be it.
Councilor Neese?
I too wasn't real fond of this in the beginning, and I was really concerned about the businesses, but the way this is outlined and with what they are putting together, I feel that we would be okay and we won't be harming the businesses, and that's what I had a major concern about.
Any other questions? Would someone like to make a motion then?
I'll make a motion that we accept ordinance number 1497, adding chapter 5.55 to the Gladstone Municipal Code titled Business Food Waste Requirements.
I'll second. Motion was made by Councilor Neese and seconded by Councilor Todd. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Oh,
if I may.
yes.
So, I still don't like, as mentioned, I don't like the idea of being told what to do by Metro. I don't think they have the authority to do it. One question I did forget to ask, how much have we gotten from Metro over like the last 5 years?
For this, or
no, just in general? Because, I mean, looking at what you put together, that they could just cut off all funds.
I'm not sure if it's only funds related to waste and recycling, but the city has benefited greatly in the past from receiving funds for the feasibility on the trolley trail. That was through a Metro partnership.
About $150,000?
$150,000. The downtown revitalization plan, we received flex funds to work on that too. About another $100,000 there. And that's, since I've been here, I wouldn't know going back.
Sure.
But I don't know if those funds would be withheld if we didn't approve this, and that was part of my question as well. But I do know just losing the technical assistance with this program is something that city staff, we just don't have the ability to pick up and do that.
As my thought is, if businesses want to do this on their own, go for it. Because as mentioned by one of the staff members, I can't remember if it was Metro or county, is it has been a volunteer-based program for like 10 years or more, but not enough businesses have been volunteering. So now they're mandating it, and I don't like government mandating something like this.
Councilor Neese?
So thank you.
And I feel the same way you do about government stepping in and telling us we have to do this, we have to do that. But for the first time, we have got people at the table that we've never had before, where we have started to establish some kind of a relationship and having communication and talking. And I feel that that's really important. I don't think this is going to harm us. I think we'll be okay in the long run. And we do have an opportunity in the future if we need to change it, and we can go back. Is that correct?
We're going to have to come through and do an implementation process with you, and we're looking out 2021 before we've got to make those changes. But yeah, there'll be more conversations coming to you on that.
So I think we'll be okay. I feel confident about it.
All right, anything else? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye. Or
Motion
nay?
passed. All right.
Have to do a second reading
On
at
this
the
one?
next meeting.
Okay.
Because it was not unanimous. So we'll put that on for the next agenda then.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you guys for coming tonight.
Next item is number 10, Resolution 1166, declaring funds received as assigned fund balance, Gladstone Public Library within the general fund of the city. Staff?
Okay, so Kathy Brucker, our interim finance director, has prepared the staff report for you.
Good evening. I'll try to speak up loud enough.
Yeah, do you want to pull that
Yes, I
microphone a
will.
little bit closer?
Thank you. So as you know, this is just a brief recap of what the situation is. And as you know, the Gladstone Library Advisory Board was authorized originally through Resolution 346, then revised with Ordinance Number 1072 to establish and maintain a fund separate from the city budget for the benefit of the Gladstone Public Library. This guidance originated in the late 70s and continued on with minimal revisions over the next 40 years. Ordinance number 1484, which was passed in January of 2018, brought consistency and compliance to the advisory board structure within the city. The policy also eliminated all funds held separately from the city budget and required any money to be deposited and accounted for with city funds. However, with the staff transition at the library and what was going on at the time, the revisions we're assuming were not communicated clearly to the advisory board, so the funds remained isolated in a library account. With the impending library transition to the county oversight, the advisory board wanted to ensure that these funds were spent on the new library and requested the library foundation to take custodial care of the balance of this account. Originally, right prior to that happening, we were not even aware, as far as administration was not aware, that this fund was in existence at all. So they had, as I say, requested the foundation. The funds were identified as to the source by the foundation and deposited to a certificate of deposit with the local credit union. These funds were always intended for improvement of the library, and as noted in the staff report, the intent of the advisory board and the foundation was pure, there's no doubt. Because these funds are legally city property, though, the credit union has agreed to transfer ownership of that certificate of deposit over to the city so that there will be no withdrawal penalties that would be assessed against it. So our request is to establish an account within the city general fund entitled an assigned fund balance Gladstone Public Library, which is a governmental GAAP designation that will ensure that the funds are spent accordingly. Resolution 1166 will require funds be administered by the city administrator for this purpose with the advice of the Gladstone Library Foundation Board and the Gladstone Library Planning Task Force. Funds may not be redirected for any other use except by the City Council through the same resolution process. The funds would be monitored annually during the audit process, and restrictions placed by the resolution would need to be met. Staff requests the approval of Resolution 1166, allowing the funds be restricted to future use at the Gladstone Public Library as stated, and staff requests the annulment of the existing MOU entered into by the Gladstone Library Board and the Gladstone Foundation Library Board. Have you any questions?
Definitely.
Councilor
One
Redfern.
just jumped out at me. You mentioned that you didn't even know that the $16,000 existed?
No. We did not know that at all.
How's that? Because in audits over the years, they have stated, maybe this is for your time, and they dropped the ball. They stated that it wasn't enough money to audit. Per state ORSs, all funds are supposed to be audited, and they're like, no, it's only $16,000. It wouldn't be worth the money to do it because it would cost $3,000 to $4,000 just to audit the $16,000.
Councilor Reiser, I can't speak to that at all.
So they didn't bring, I'm sorry.
Shortly after I got here, Jackie and I discussed this type of situation, and we checked with all of the directors at that time if there were any funds sitting out there that were not accounted for within the city funds. and we were told there were none at that time. Again, there was the transition of the library director and everything else at that time too. So I really can't speak to the situation, but at that point in January, February 2018, we weren't aware of anything out there.
Interesting.
Are you done with your questions?
No, I'm not sure if these, the next ones I have, are for now, or you mentioned that you added to the agenda talking about the library board and the planning commission.
That's in business carried forward.
Yes.
Okay, then I'll delay my question about dissolving the library board.
I can share that information with you now, if that helps.
No.
We'll do it.
No, we can wait. So will this funds be set up like what is set up at the senior center, with where bequests are made, and those are kind of like etched in stone, where that money is only spent on those?
This money would be.
Right,
as
that's what
far
I'm sorry.
as future donations, et cetera, no. Any donations that have been received recently at the senior center or the library come in just as donations, and they're useful within, utilized within that category, but they're not set up as an endowment or anything like that. The reason we were trying to do this, make this a little bit more restricted, was to assure the library advisory board that it will be utilized on the library. They've collected this money, through little fundraisers, various donations, and bequests over a matter of years. And by doing it this way, we're able to ensure that it is spent on the library. The money is city funds, regardless. So if you do not approve the resolution, it will still be turned over to the city. It would just not be restricted for library use.
Right.
I think they want it restricted.
Oh, definitely. So what? Yeah, no, I definitely. That's because that's the desire of the library board. That's why they took the steps that they did. So what involvement have you had in the last? I don't know. I guess let me step back. So when did this come to light? The 16,000.
This came to light several months back. One of the members of the advisory board came and requested an employer ID number, because they wanted to they wanted to move this money that they had into another account that earned more interest. And so at that time I asked her, where does this money originate from, and what is it tied to? So that's when we started investigating into it a bit.
Okay. So then that was and apparently after the money was transferred?
No, actually they had moved the money out of the account it was at, and it was just sitting in a check payable to the library advisory board. And at that time then we had determined that they would provide more information, we'd figure it, get back and we'd figure out what to do with it. And again, just with things going on, et cetera, the library advisory board decided they would go into this MOU with the foundation and deposit it through there. Shortly about that same time, I sent a letter to them requesting that, we get this issue settled. And they came back, and that's at the time that we found out that it had been put into the certificate of deposit.
Yep.
So it was very close
Give
time-wise.
Linda a chance real quick.
Sure.
Councillor Neese.
You missed the meeting. I was at that.
2 months ago?
Yes.
Okay, and there was discussion.
And there was heavy discussion about it, and of what to do with the money, and for them to set on it, and where was it going to go, and how they were going to protect it. So that is the reason why it came to light, because
I do remember that, and even the month before there was a lot of discussion about it.
So this is how it all surfaced forward.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for answering my question.
You're welcome.
I believe
Questions?
the Library Foundation is going to continue to be actively fundraising and accepting it now in their account. This money is going to be like frozen, collecting interest in the CD. And I think, you know, Kathy and I, we truly believe this was in the right spirit of what they want. They knew that we were transferring operations over to Clackamas County, and they wanted to preserve that money to spend on the new library when they knew they wanted to use it. So for us, it's really a housekeeping to assure that we're putting it in the correct fund balance, so that it can be spent appropriately in the future. They've asked to receive quarterly reports on the interest that it's earning, and we said that's not a problem, so.
And you're correct, because like I said, I'm the library liaison, and that was a big concern of theirs. So have the documentation as to how that money has been spent been provided to staff?
How, what money?
Hasn't been spent.
No, well,
There's been no money spent.
no, but how the money is to be spent.
That's what this resolution is for
Restrict
tonight.
it, yeah.
No, I know that, but there's also documentation as to, you know, from different entities that
They
spell
couldn't
out.
provide that to us. We did ask if we could get copies of the bequests, and they did not have that at the time, so.
And what they shared at that time was that the bequest was quite small and it had been spent in full previously. There was no bequest funds tied to this 16,000
Okay.
still. Basically fundraising, book sales, whatever, things like that.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
This money was totally
Right.
separate.
Okay.
All right, any further questions? Do we have any public comments?
No.
All right, would someone like to make a motion?
I would. I move that we approve Resolution 1166, resolving that the City Council of the City of Gladstone, Oregon, declare funds received as assigned fund balance, Gladstone Public Library within the general fund of the city.
I'll second that.
Motion was made by Counselor Reisner and seconded by Counselor Neese. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is number 11. Oh,
Sorry, I think we also, just for the record, want to recognize that the memo of understanding has been annulled tonight in reflect of this resolution. So thank you.
okay, thank you. Next is item number 11, Ordinance 1498, amending Title 17 of the Gladstone Municipal Code, the GMC, pertaining to time limit extensions of land use approvals. Staff?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, again, Chad Jacobs from the City Attorney's Office. What you have before you tonight is an ordinance that's come to you by way of recommendation of the Planning Commission. It is a proposed amendment to the Development Code, and the basic issue is that they want to clarify when and how the city may extend certain land use approvals. Basically, when a land use approval occurs, people have a certain amount of time to complete the project that they've gotten approval for. If they don't do that, they can come back to the city and seek approval for an extension of that previous land use approval. What this does is it changes the process of how that occurs. Historically, most of these decisions had to go back to the Planning Commission. Now most of these decisions are being proposed to come to the city administrator or the administrator's designee. Specifically, they relate to these four types of approvals: conditional uses, variances, adjustments, and design review. There is language, as you'll see in the code, that makes this permissive. It's not mandatory. It allows the staff to say no if, in fact, they don't have enough time or enough information to be able to make the decision. And there are certain decisions, specifically a request to renew or extend a design review approval must be submitted at least 90 days prior to the expiration. The one sort of major change from a policy perspective is that any request for an extended approval needs to be done before the existing approval expires. Right now, people can come in after it expires and retroactively ask for an extension. This would not permit them to do so, and would require them to make that request before the approval has expired. This is a land use decision, so it's a legislative amendment to your land use code, so you do need to have a public hearing tonight. So you'll need to open up the public hearing and go through that process. It is not a quasi-judicial, again, it's a legislative decision, so you don't need to declare biases and those sorts of things, but you do have to have a public hearing.
And do you need to read the whole public hearing script?
No, that's
No?
what I was saying, because it's not a quasi-judicial hearing, so we don't have to go through all that rigmarole.
Okay, then I open the public hearing for ordinance 1498, amending Title 17 of the Gladstone Municipal Code, the GMC, pertaining to time limit extensions of land use approvals. Do we have any discussion? Any questions?
So, Madam Mayor, you should see if there's anyone from the
Yeah.
public who wants to comment, and then close the public hearing, and then engage in the discussion.
Yep. Do we have any public comment?
We do not.
All right, I would like to have someone make a motion to close the public hearing then.
I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion was made by Counselor Neese and seconded by Counselor Tracy to close the public hearing. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing's closed.
Did you ask the public if they wanted to speak? I got kinda confused by that.
Yeah, I did.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't fill out a card for that one.
No.
Would someone like to make a motion to
I move
reopen?
that we reopen the hearing.
Second.
Motion was made to reopen the public hearing by Counselor Reisner and seconded by Counselor Tracy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing is now open. Claire, could you fill a card out and please bring it up to her so we have it for the record? And could somebody open that back door? It kind of helps get airflow in here.
What's the
Thank you.
agenda item?
11. Thank you. You're up.
Okay. So I think I want to understand more about this agenda item, just because there was a comment made that what if you moved it to, so it was going to Planning Commission, correct?
Yes.
Before. And if you moved it to the city taking care of these decisions, did I hear, it was you that was speaking, correct? Did I hear you say that it might make it easy for the city to just disregard not enough staff or disapprove?
No, I'm sorry if I made it sound like that.
That's kind of how it sounded, like moving them through.
Yeah. So the
almost sounded
decisions
like-
used to have to go to the Planning Commission. The proposal is that they would, instead of coming to the Planning Commission, they would come to the city administrator or the city
Okay.
administrator's designee, so coming to staff. Because
Extensions.
for extensions, only not the original decision, but just the extension.
Okay.
And so as it is now, it's not mandatory that the city grants an extension,
Okay.
that it's permissive. So this allows the city to do that through city staff instead of the Planning Commission. And the issues that they would take into consideration, some of the issues they would take into consideration is the timing in which the request was made. So if it was a request made at the very last minute and
Okay.
staff didn't have the capacity to do that, they could say no based on that
Okay, it
reason.
does seem like it would add a very big piece of work to the city, all of those requests coming through. Would it add costs?
I'll defer to the city administrator. I would probably say no because, when it's going to planning commission, there's additional staff costs that would apply as well because they have to prepare for the planning commission and have the planning commission meeting and all those sorts of things.
Okay.
And that takes that process out of it and just goes through staff. So
Yeah.
conceivably, it would be less work for the city.
Okay.
They have to refile an application fee, they have to do a noticing.
Right.
And we're really trying to streamline that because we understand in today's economy, sometimes it's taking developers more than a year
Right.
to complete their design review. And so this way, the Planning Commission was having to reconsider applications that had already been approved.
Oh, I see.
And it's just that if they had come and asked like a month sooner, they wouldn't have expired. So this really is to try to help streamline the
Okay.
process to
Okay.
do that.
Okay, that's helpful. I think the planning commission does a good job digging in and helping people get to a solution. And so I guess when I heard that comment, I was like, oh no, I think it should stay with the planning commission. But
All right,
thank
thank you. Anybody else, Tammy?
No.
All right, would someone like to make a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion was made by Counselor Neese, seconded by Counselor Tracy to close the public hearing. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing closed. All right, any discussion?
I like the idea. Sorry.
Thank you. Make it official?
Yes.
Thank you.
Of making it clearer as to when things need, when a reapplication or a renewal is needed, because we have had over the last couple of years that happen, and it kind of got muddy and messy. So I'm all for that. However, I disagree with taking it away from the Planning Commission and giving it to the city administrator, or in essence, really the county planning department. And I think a prime example is the building at the south end of Portland Avenue that was supposed to be looking like a house.
Oh. That's,
that
yeah.
That I know that has nothing to do with the extension.
Yeah.
But what it is the county making decisions that isn't necessarily in our best interest. We have some other business, Lake Oswego Tiger building. So, I think it needs to stay with the Planning Commission. Yeah, you know, and granted, we've had they owned Thriftway for years, and then Danielson's came before us 2 or 3 times over the years on the property that 24 Hours is sitting at, and because time ran out, and I mean they didn't come right back. But also, isn't there also on a lot of circumstances where a 1-year automatic extension is given?
Mm-mm.
No? Okay.
Nope.
That must have been back in the day.
Nope.
So that's my thoughts. Thanks.
First, this is not a new application. The Planning Commission has already seen these, so that's already been approved, and this is just simply an extension. And I agree that there's a lot of times where these developers aren't even getting through the permitting stuff for a year. So an automatic extension gone through staff makes a whole lot of sense. Councilor Mershero?
I was going to say the Planning Commission wants it to go this way.
Thank
They've
you.
been working for some time to make sure everybody agrees, and they're for it.
And given the fact that our planning services is provided by a contractor, they would not be able to make that decision without input from the city administrator. So I wanted assurances there that they would not be extending these without making sure that the city administrator was aware of what was being asked and what was being approved.
All right. Any further discussion? Would someone like to make a motion?
One other question, if I may. So is this for just 1 more year?
Yes, the extensions are for 1-year periods.
Okay, so a developer could ask for a 1-year extension, come back in another year for another year extension that the city administrator or designee would and could approve?
I think it says it can be renewed
For not more than 1 year.
Or not more than 1 year?
Not more than
Yes.
1 year.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Appreciate the clarification.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that ordinance number 1498, amending Title 17 zoning and development of the Gladstone Municipal Code.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion was made by Councilor Neese and seconded by Councilor Todd. Any further discussion?
One
Councilor Reisner.
One other question. So in that year that Ms. Betts approves a year extension and they need more time, what's the process?
A new application, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, a new application.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, motion's on the table. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Second reading? Do you want to read the script for the second reading? Or do we have a script for
There's
that
no
one? There is no
script for
script for
second
that
reading,
one.
yes.
All right. Well, then we're here to discuss Ordinance 1498, amending Title 17 of the Gladstone Municipal Code, GMC, pertaining to time limit extensions of land use approvals, second reading. Any discussion? Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion on ordinance 1498, Exhibit A, proposed amendments to Gladstone Municipal Code, Title 17, zoning and development.
I'll second again. Motion was made by Councilor Neese, seconded by Councilor Todd. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? second reading's passed. Next is item number 12, direction on utility rates for January 2020 implementation.
Good evening, Mayor Stemple and Council. Staff's here tonight to ask for direction from Council on where you want to go with the utility rates in the city of Gladstone. For years, little to no rate increases were done in the city, let alone any investment. In 2014, the city started updating its master plans, followed by rate studies and SDC updates, which are system development charges. In 2016, the city started informing and educating its citizens with open houses, work sessions, council meetings, mailers, fact sheets, surveys, and many other forms that I don't have wrote down here. In 2017, the city started phasing in rate increases. And to date, the city has raised its utility rates over the last 2.5 years by $14.55, or you can look at that as 49 cents a day. The rates have gone up more than that, but those are pass-throughs that the city does not have control of. We have services through our water treatment plants for both sewer treatment and drinking water treatment. Those rates you see on your utility bills as pass-throughs. Those the city does not control. With those rate increases that the city's done over the last 2.5 years, that has put the city in a position to now properly operate and maintain its system, but it does not generate enough funds to do replacement or deal with the mutual agreement order we now have with DEQ to address our sewer system and to prevent raw sewage from overflowing into the Clackamas River every time we have a heavy rain. With our open house, we came to the citizens with 3 options to consider, and these 3 options were options that was discussed with council back in January when we did our goal setting. Those options are a mandated minimum, basically a minimum amount of rate increase to deal with our mutual agreement order and get our sewer system in compliance with DEQ, basically quit overflowing raw sewage to the Clackamas River. That mandated minimum would be a $7.68 a month increase, or 26 cents a day is what that comes out to. The other option is to raise the rates based on what the rate studies say, and those rate studies are based on master plans that the city spends hundreds of thousands of dollars on really digging in deep into the city's infrastructure and figuring out what it costs to fix. Those rate studies say that we need to do a $65.11 a month rate increase, or $2.17 a day. That would replace the city's infrastructure within 20 to 30 years. And then the third option would be an option that's in the middle of those, not exactly in the middle, but in between. And that would be a $17.62 a month increase, or 59 cents a day. What that would allow the city to do is replace its infrastructure every 100 years. And those are the 3 options that were presented at our open house, and also shown on the survey that 138 people did respond to, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Example of some of the replacement costs and where I got my numbers was a recent project that we bid out earlier this year, and we are in the middle of doing right now. It's a grant project. And to replace 2 blocks of infrastructure in the city, which is all your water, your sewer, your storm, and your street, it's running about $900 a lineal foot to replace all that. The city currently operates and maintains about 40 miles of infrastructure, or in feet, that's 211,000 feet of infrastructure. If you apply that $900 per foot to that, that's $190 million is what the city's infrastructure would cost to replace in today's dollars. On a 100-year replacement schedule, if that option in the middle was chosen, we would need to be spending approximately $1.9 million a year to replace its infrastructure once every 100 years. Attached in the packet, you'll find a copy of the displays boards from the open house, which has a lot of information in them, comparables with adjacent entities. There's been a lot of questions about our tax dollars, why can't those be used? Well, there's also a description of there of what your tax dollars monies go for, and approximately 27 cents of it goes to the city of Gladstone. Also in the packet is how that 27 cents is split up within the city of Gladstone General Fund. The most recent survey results are in there as well, and actually just today, we just closed the survey today, so we had another week of input from the citizens, so we got a total of 138 surveys filled out, and those are what was emailed out to you and put on your dais this evening. You'll notice in there the yellow highlights are all the additional information. So a week ago we had 111 responses. Today we have 138 total. What we have found through this survey, looking at it every week and over the last week, the percentages have remained the same. Basically 61% of the survey respondents recommend doing more than just the minimum, the mandated minimum. With that, there's a lot of information in there. I don't want to bore you with just reading that. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Questions? Can't believe no one has questions. No, I do. All right, Councilor Todd.
Okay, so you're saying right now it's about $900 per linear foot for the Clarendon project, right?
Correct.
When was the project up off of Addy? How many years ago was that?
Addy Street was done about 2.5, 3 years ago.
And how much was it per
linear foot? And that was
foot?
about $650 a linear foot.
So it's $300 more per linear foot?
Yes.
Waiting, so about, okay.
Yes.
That's just, I was wondering. I thought it was closer to 5, but it was,
yeah.
Okay.
How many years ago was Addy Street? I'm sorry.
About 2.5, 3 years ago.
Councilor Mercero?
My understanding is when we completed and approved the master plan, we had a maximum or minimum, no maximum, of 30 years to complete the project. How long ago was that master plan approved?
Excuse me, the city's done many of master plans over the last several years. So the stormwater and the water master plan was finished in 2014. The wastewater or sewer master plan was finished in 2017.
Okay, so approximately 5 years ago. So we really only got 25 years left.
Right. And as you can see from the example I gave Councilor Todd, that the prices do go up, absolutely.
Councilor Tracy?
At one point, Director, why not? We had pass-throughs because we had passed through or cross-subsidized, if I'm incorrect, correct me as I go, cross-subsidized the wholesale water prices. Is that not correct?
That's a little piece of it on the water portion. A big percentage of that $14.55 rate increase over the last 2.5 years was implementing a stormwater utility. Prior to 2017, the city did not have a stormwater utility, which actually is probably some of the reason why we flooded all the time. With that, $10 of that, $14.55, has gone into establishing a stormwater utility. It was phased in over a 2-year period. So now we have a stormwater utility. We're actually out maintaining, cleaning lines.
And that was a big part of the initial, that $14.55.
Absolutely, yes.
But if anything is cross-subsidized in the infrastructure, in the utilities, it's coming out of another fund, or it's not?
It's actually illegal to do that. You cannot use water funds to pay for streets, or sewer funds to pay for parks, or
urban renewal
or any
funds.
other way. These funds are enterprise funds, so that your sewer rates pay for sewer only. It goes into a dedicated fund for sewer, and it can only be used for sewer. Same with water and storm and or transportation.
So I have one last question, if I may. The other thing I'm concerned about is that to be in compliance with the MOU, we're projecting and forecasting on the costs, right?
Yes.
Potentially for the 5 years.
Yes.
So we could do the minimum mandated,
Mm-hmm.
and still not be in compliance, and then again, we would have to come back to finding a funding measure to be able to actually get into compliance, even though we're at the minimum mandate.
Yes, and to add on to that a little bit, the reason why that's possible is the first 2 years of this 5-year plan is doing some studies to figure out where the intrusion, where the failure in the pipes are. So basically, we have to do an I&I study, an infiltration and inflow study, because you've seen in some of our monthly reports with joints in the pipes and water just gushing in. So we have to go out and identify all those, and those are what we need to address by the end of the 5 years.
So maybe what
until we get a real solid, we've got X amount of joints that need fixed and manholes and such, we are estimating that.
So it's not just the stormwater surface run that infiltrates these pipes. It's also the seepage through the saturation of the ground during a rain event that's filling up the pipes and going to the CSO, combined sewage overflow, into the river. Is that
yes,
correct?
and in Gladstone's case, which, because Gladstone basically hasn't dealt with this issue back in the 80s and 90s where a lot of other cities did, is there's a lot of catch basins, which is your stormwater runoff, that flows right directly into the sanitary sewer. And so that's our first order of business, is starting eliminating some of those. And as a matter of fact, this Clarendon project's going to get 3 of those off. And the square footage of rainwater that those are capturing and dumping into our sanitary sewer is huge. So that's the first start. So there's 3 out of about 12 to 15 that we're aware of. Okay. And this was an easy one because stormwater system was nearby. There's some of them that there is no stormwater system nearby. So we got to go to a stormwater system.
But it wouldn't matter even if you were to do something with catch basins on the surface. You still have enough I&I that you're still running large amounts of water into the storm.
That's the opinion of DEQ when they looked at our master plan and such, and that's why they are requiring us to do an I&I study.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
They're requiring it, or they're mandating that it has to be done?
Oh, mandating, yeah.
MOU.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is available on our website if anybody wants to see that actual mutual agreement order. It gives us a pretty descriptive 5-year timeline of what we do each year. Yeah, and we entered into that agreement, the city entered into that agreement, so during this 5-year period, we are going to overflow to the river because we're not going to fix the system in year 1. This is going to protect the city from future. It's going to help protect the city against lawsuits from outside entities for flowing sewage to the river, and it's also going to reduce, if not eliminate, our fines from DEQ that we've been getting. And as long as we stay on course and follow that mutual agreement and order, that's the whole reason of the mutual agreement order. It gives the city time to fix its system.
Could you clarify again how much outreach we have done? Because there's a comment made that our outreach is just simply a dog and pony show, and I kind of find that, I find that offensive, because we've been talking about this for years.
Absolutely, Mayor. Since I've been here, I started in December of 2015, and this actually started before I even got here in 2014 with starting of the master plans. But just since I've been here, the public outreach really got engaged in 2016 prior to doing any rate increases, even this 1455 that we've done so far, implementing a stormwater utility. So in 2016, we had open houses. We've had it at the auditorium at the high school. We've had them at the senior center. We've had countless work sessions. I can't even think of how many countless work sessions we've had, plus council meetings where we talked about this. We did mailers in the utility bills, and we do we got a little window on the utility bill to talk about it now. We've mailed out fact sheets, handed out fact sheets, and we've done surveys. The most recent one I just talked about earlier, we just finished up today, that 60% of this community says do something with its system. That's basically what the community is saying that's filled out these surveys.
And just for those in the audience that think that we don't listen, we got copies of every single comment that was made. So, yeah.
We have copies here that we just printed tonight, and Tammy can hand those out. And they're also on the website in the council packet, so they're posted online.
No one else? So, and also, prior to these master plans recently being completed, we did not work off master plans. We were just guessing what needed to be fixed. We were putting Band-Aids on a failing system. Then we hired people, experts, to put the time into creating our master plans that identified our capital improvement projects so that we have a plan to move forward of what really needs to be fixed instead of guessing.
Yes, and some of these plans are required by law. Well, the water system plan, for example, is required to be updated every 5 to 10 years. It was last done in like 1990, if I'm not mistaken, and it was redone in 14. Our transportation system plan, which we're not talking about tonight, it was back in the 90s since it had been done. Prior to 2014, the city did not even have a stormwater master plan whatsoever, so that was the city's first. It had to start from scratch. It wasn't an update. And the sanitary sewer plan, again, was back from the 90s.
Yeah,
So,
and I want to thank you because our Public Works Department has made such a huge effort to to take care of all of the low-hanging fruit first, to make sure that when we have to invest in our infrastructure, all of the easy things are done so that we can see really what needs to be done.
Yes. I would encourage anybody, we've been doing a monthly report now for two and a half years or so, and we go into pretty good detail. If you're wondering what your Public Works Department is doing with your infrastructure, take the time, go in there. There's a report for every single month. It's in the council packet. Go in there and look and see what we're doing. And that's what we're doing now. That's where we're at, being able to maintain the system. These are things we're doing to maintain and make it last as long as it can. But we are not in a position to go out and start spending this $1.9 million a year to replace our infrastructure every 100 years. Our infrastructure lasts 50 to 75 years, so that's not even getting the city where it should be. I mean, this is just real crude, simple math. This is what it costs to replace. This doesn't even include inflation. I mean, we just talked about inflation a little bit ago, and so...
Yeah.
And the comparables with other entities. And we use these other entities right around us because we share treatment plants. We share the wastewater treatment plant. We share the water treatment plant. So we have similar cost. It's not like going out, picking a small city out in the middle of nowhere type of a thing. These are cities that we share costs with. So that's why we use these entities, because they pay the same treatment costs.
Councilor Tracy?
While I wasn't listening and paying attention, I noticed that folks that were on the Oak Lodge Water Services system have different rates or they're concerned about those rate structures. Can you give us just a little brief elevator speech on the rates for
No,
Oak Lodge?
absolutely. So the city has two different rates. We used a rate example that I did see a lot of comments in there. That's nothing what I pay. Well, that rate is what about 2/3 of the city rates are. It's a typical single-family home on our Tri-Cities sewer treatment plant. So we have about 3,400 accounts, and so about 2,000 of those that is what their bill is. So our different rates are based on our sewer treatment. So Tri-Cities, which is about 2/3 of the city, their sewer portion is approximately $25 to $30, something like that. I don't know exactly. Now the other third of the city is on Oak Lodge Water Services treatment plant. Their treatment plant was recently rebuilt, and so there's some cost to that. So that bill, just the pass-through alone, is in the 50s, like $56 a month. So that's the difference. It's like $25, $30 a month difference between a third of the city and the other 2/3 of the city.
But again, it's a pass-through.
It is a pass-through, and if you look on your bill, and there was a lot of concerns that someone's bill's already over $100. Well, if their bill's over $100, it probably doesn't even come to Gladstone. It's probably an Oak Lodge. There's almost 140 homes in the city of Gladstone that don't even pay a utility bill to the city of Gladstone. They pay water and sewer to Oak Lodge. So they're paying their rate, and if you look at the comparisons, that's the rate that they're paying. So it is a lot more. We're not talking about those bills. We're not talking about the pass-throughs. We're talking about what goes to the city. That's why I kind of changed to using, instead of percentages, which is misleading the way we have it split up, went to actually dollars. So if you pay a water and sewer bill and a stormwater bill to the city of Gladstone, this is what you'll see. There's some that pay their water to Oak Lodge, and they pay the sewer and storm to Gladstone. So it's going to be a little bit different. The reason why we use those comparables, because the majority of the city, that is what they pay.
Yes.
Did that answer your question? about
Yeah,
the
that did.
different- Okay, good.
And then my other question is, we see the comments, and I know that you've spoken about the CCF usage.
Mhm.
So going away from the 6 minimum and now metering down to whatever the actual usage is?
Yeah, so part of once we get direction from council tonight on which rate structure we want to go with, what we do plan on doing when we implement this rate increase in January is actually change our water rate structure to a conservation block rate with a base charge. So basically, what that does is there's approximately, I got some of the notes here, there's approximately 2,200 accounts that use 6 units or less of water. So there are a lot of accounts that fall in that paying for water they're not using the way it's currently structured. So what we are going to do is we've figured out a way to restructure it to where it doesn't impact every individual a lot. Some are going to go down, some are going to go up a little bit more, typically if they're right at that 6 units. But it's also going to correct that, so you have a base meter charge that basically covers the meter charge and the operation and maintenance of the water system. That does not change based on how much water is used in the city. So that's what the base meter charge should be. So we figured out what that is, and you can go into our budget and you can look at the things that don't change. You know, that's staff, the paying for fixing the water lines and all the other stuff. It's broke down in there. The water usage is tied to electricity, the things that do change based on water usage. So the water bill from our treatment plant that we pay, the electricity and capital are tied to the water usage. So we're able to do a rate structure that will make a more stable rate structure and also help many people that fall in that 6 units or less, where they have an incentive to conserve water because they can actually have some effect on their water bill. So we're going to work out those details once we figure out a rate structure to go to and bring that back in November when we update the master fee schedule.
And the other underutilized program is the city does have a low-income assistance program, and we're going to promote that more because we do have the ability to reduce people's rates that qualify for federal guidelines by about 50%. And so combining that new way of conserving and having more control of your water usage and your utility bill, the city also wants to promote its low-income assistance program that we have.
And the other advantage of going with a conservation block rate is water rights are getting very, very difficult to keep. If you're not using them, you're going to lose them. And so what we need to do is we need to be able to also demonstrate that we're trying to do our part in conserving water. All of our partners on the Clackamas River, for the most part, have conservation block rates. So basically, when you go to a certain point, you pay this much, and it goes up incrementally as you use more water. And that will help us in protecting our water rights. So our partners on the Clackamas River are Sunrise Water Authority and Oak Lodge Water Services. The 3 of us co-own North Clackamas County Water Commission. They have conservation block rates. This is something that we really should have done a long time ago. And so this is a good thing for water rights as well.
Any more questions? All right, do we have public comments?
Yes, we do.
Call the first one up, please.
First is Claire Coy.
Again. Okay, so I wasn't sure if my comments were more for 12 or 13. It looks like they're kind of, both things are talking about the same thing, but I wanted to address kind of a couple pieces. The fees that are added to our utility bills, I'm not a supporter of the additional fees, and I'm not a supporter, if I'm not a supporter, how our town elders, who may be housebound and not here tonight, that are also on very limited income, they wouldn't be supportive either. I just don't feel like we do a very good job communicating. I really don't see, I didn't even know that survey was a thing, and I'm hearing in the audience that you have to go dig it out of a website. And I mean, he said 60% of our community is supportive of this, but it's actually 60% of 138 people who took the survey. So we need to try to figure out how we're going to communicate with our community, because we're not doing a good job about it. And so while we're on the topic of concerns with utilities, I also don't agree with the minimum charge per household on the water bill. Some months I don't meet the minimum. I think it's 6 units. Don't quote me on that. I don't know. I'm a large family. There are 4 or 5. Sometimes we have extra people in our house because we have friends and we always have people coming, and we're not meeting the minimum water. So that means we're actually paying for water that we're not using. And it just makes me cringe that little, and Mary Beth down the way that's been in Gladstone for 70 years and lived in that house, and she's all by herself, is paying the same minimum I am. We are paying too much. We don't need the additional fees. We don't need the big fancy infrastructures that Mercereau says we actually have 20 more years we even have to worry about. It's just absolutely asinine how expensive it has gotten to be in Gladstone. That is bottom line. Or it may sound like $14, but you can $14 us to death. That's pretty much it. And as I read these surveys, I just got this packet, but I almost can't find a good one. I'm looking for the 60%, but I see I've owned my home in Gladstone for 6 years. My water rates have already doubled. I'm retired. I'm on a fixed income. I can't afford this. I see another one. It's ridiculous to expect the whole burden of replacing this water infrastructure to be all on the homeowners. I see elders are going to have a hard time with this. This is adding to our bills, and those that are going to be in my position would face a hardship. I come digging through this thing, and of course I'll look at it more at home, and I'm sure their numbers are right, but the point is this is tough to stomach, and I think we can do a better job communicating.
Thank you very much. Next.
Bill Osborne.
Bill Osborne. I also have a note here sent to me. Just going to see if anybody can read that in from another resident. If not, if it can be part of the record. We talked about the rate increases and stuff. We've also had stormwater fees implemented and doubled. Property taxes in Gladstone are pretty much the highest anywhere. And I realize that a lot of that is our school bond at $4.50 per 1,000 of assessed value, but it all plays into the livability of Gladstone. Our school enrollment is on the decline. We have teachers that have been laid off. We have, the school board talking about, an issue financially because they get essentially money per student that's in there, and as we have less and less students, that's less and less money to our schools. That's state and federal money, I believe, that comes in. So when we look at the big picture here, it's livability, and cost plays a big issue with that. And that's one of the big things. We have the right-of-way fee coming up later, but that was one of the things where the pass-through the city doesn't control, Jim said. And I think Jim's doing a great job, and the Public Works Department's doing a great job. But the city does control some of those. Agenda item number 13 is one of those pass-throughs the city implemented. So hopefully tonight something will change with that. I understand that the infrastructure needs work, but I also understand that nothing has been done for years, even though people have been paying that. And part of what they pay is to upgrade or to keep up with that. So I don't know what happened with the money. I know that there's a lot of distrust when people look to the governing body, which is the council, not necessarily these individuals here, but the council as a whole. And for years, the council in Gladstone mismanaged the money. The repairs weren't done, the upkeep didn't happen, and now we're faced with this big repair that needs to be done, and it's not fair. So I hope when you look at the rates, you look at the overall livability. The outreach to people also is an issue. As I've said, there's more that needs to be done there. I know you guys are doing better than in the past, but there's still a lot of room for improvement. 138 people that answered this survey. There's about 12,000 in Gladstone. And personally, I don't see that 60% of the people here want to pay a higher utility bill. It's just something most people don't. You know, some solutions to this might be that allowing some people to volunteer to pay a higher rate, because some people have more money and might do that. Another thing that I've discussed with some of you, nobody seems to be interested in, is talking to Wes about taking over the sewers. That would be one less thing for us to deal with.
Thank you very much.
I do have this here.
Could you give it to Jackie, please? Next.
Kevin Johnson.
I didn't have time to write anything down, but the problem is nothing's been fixed because since the late 70s the council never raised the rates. So yeah, we were paying a bill all this time, but there was never money for any replacement or maintenance to be kept up. Probably since the late 70s, the amount of increases we've had till 2 years ago wouldn't even come close to just the inflation, let alone replacing or repairing anything. So I didn't see, I mean, I don't have the paperwork with me, but the three options were, one of them was 75, 185, 130 or whatever it was. To me, the fourth option should be the $100 range, which puts you in the same category as most of the other cities. Because if you go the low rate or one or two, unless there's an annual increase that at least keeps up with inflation, by the second year you're already behind the 8 ball again. So, and it's not just residents that are paying for it. Every business that has a water meter, everybody that has a water meter is going to pay the increase. It's not just on the backs of the homeowners or the apartment people or the renters. It's everybody that has a water meter in the city of Gladstone. And anybody that thinks that we can keep going down the road we're on right now and not get this stuff fixed is foolish.
Thank you.
Last one, Charity Powell.
Hi. So first of all, thank you for your service. And I understand the need for infrastructure repair. We moved down from Portland and have watched our water rates go up. And so there's always a lot of talk about Gladstone's rates being lower than surrounding areas, but I paid a water bill in Portland for 10 years, and that is not what we're experiencing. We are part of the Oak Lodge, so our rates are higher than the Gladstone. And what I'm hearing tonight is that we pay higher Oak Lodge because of the pass-through, because they've already updated their sewer system. So I'm wondering, is there going to be anything taken into account for people who are already paying a higher rate and already having our sewer go to a location that's already been updated, when we're then being asked to then also fix the Gladstone problem? So my bill right now is, with all the increases, and I understand the need for the increases in having stormwater fees and all of that. I'm not against any of that, but we are without additional units, which sometimes we do need additional units of water. We're around $98.22 or something close to that. And the 6%, the 6 units of water that are being used, we're a household of 3, 2 of us with a 4-year-old, so we do a lot of laundry and a lot of dishwasher, but and then we have a yard that we water and care for in a garden, but we do pretty much stay within that 5 to 6 range, and in the summer months sometimes we go up to 8. So I'm not having concerns about that, but I guess it's really like, how are we accounting for the Oak Lodge people who are already paying $30 more? And I would just like that to be a consideration as we move forward, because I do think infrastructure is important. If we just neglect this, we're just going to have a bigger problem. And we were also affected by the water boil. It was right up the hill from us, and so I do understand that we need to do something. But I also think about looking at like a $60 or $80 more increase. So we're nearing $200 a month for water and sewer, and that's an incredible hardship for a 1-income family. So, and I know I'm not alone in that, and I know we're not in a financial place where we could do the low income. My income is above that, but it is still going to change our monthly budget and create a hardship. So thank you for your time.
Anybody else?
Not for the site item, no.
I do have clarification. So if they're paying to Oak Lodge, they're paying Oak Lodge. They're not going to be paying on top of that for Gladstone.
My water bill goes to Gladstone.
The water bill, yes, but the sewer, if you're going to Oak Lodge.
My water all goes to Gladstone, so maybe there's clarity.
Yeah, so the more expensive Oak Lodge Water Services customers that are paying Gladstone directly are paying more, but it's a pass-through. It's like $58.
Right.
So in her case, she said she's paying $98 a month. That dollar increase would still be what is in here. It's not, if we do the middle one, it's going to be $14 increase. That's why we went away from percentages and went to the actual dollar. So your bill would go about $14 if they chose option B.
Yeah, and if you do the one that really makes it, really helps solve the problem, then we're paying to fix a lot of what you talked about tonight is fixing the sewer repair and the drainage up, and we're already paying for that because we already did that with Oak Lodge.
Well, you're paying for their treatment plant.
Yeah.
We have to still maintain the infrastructure to get it there.
Pipes.
That's what this is for. So the city, what we pay through is for treatment plants, for sort of sewer treatment and water treatment. All the infrastructure in between is the only thing we're charging the city's collecting for. So, yeah, we don't take into account paying for their treatment plant. Again, that's their pass-through. So I hope that clarifies that.
Okay, thank you. All right. Discussion? What do you guys think? How would you like to move forward? I'll put my little thing up here. Councilor Todd.
I just feel that I cannot be a part of continuing the problem. Gladstone livability is flushing your toilet, having fresh water, having all of those things. I have 2 water leaks from my house to the main line at 2 places here. It's not fun. All of a sudden, when you realize you can't flush the toilet, you've got to go outside. That's livability to me, and I can't be a part of continuing to be a part of that problem that's happened. So that's where I'm at with it.
Thank you. Any more comments? Councilor Mercero.
One of the other concerns, and I've talked about it for a few years now, but I first looked at this problem 5 years ago when we were talking about needing to fix our sewer lines and whatever. It was a much less of a number then than it is now. It's over $100 million to replace the infrastructure at this time. A year, if we talk about it for a year or we let it go for a year, it'll cost more than $1 million a year to allow that. The longer you wait, or try to stretch it out, it goes well above $1 million. That's something. Everybody's bills are going up, and I know a lot of people are really going to have a problem with that, and have a hard time paying that bill. Somehow we've either got to come up with a magic pocket or something, or figure out a way to get through this somehow.
We were handed a huge problem when we got up here, a problem that I don't think any of us realized was as big as it is, a system that has been completely ignored for 40 years. So I love the comments where, well, we shouldn't be responsible for paying for it, you need to pay for it. Well, you are who pays for it. We get taxes and utility rates from you guys, so we all have to share in this. And everyone seems to blame us, but we're just looking for solutions. And if anybody has a better solution than raising utility rates to fix the problem, then I'll give you my cell phone number and I'll meet you for coffee. Because we need solutions and not people telling us that it can't be done, that we have to pay for it. Well, okay, what does that mean? It's not easy. I work at the food pantry. I see the people every time I'm there that are struggling. I know that. But like Councilor Todd said, we still expect to be able to flush our toilets and turn our faucets on and get fresh water. The system is broke. It is failing everywhere. And if any of you look at Jim's wonderful monthly reports, he gives you pictures of what it looks like. It's disgusting. It has to be fixed. And honestly, a 100-year cycle, there's no way that we can keep up with a 100-year cycle. Everything will be completely degraded before then, way before then. We have to do something. And if somebody's got a great solution, come on up here, take the mic, and let us know. Councilor Tracy.
So I wanted to read a couple more of the comments that are on this survey sheet just really quick. Comment 19, affordable yet still responsible to take care of our needs. 21, I would like to fix the failing infrastructure as soon as possible. 25 and 26, let's get this done before the costs go up even more. 27, reasonable acceleration of costs. So I think that equals probably pretty close to one of the citizens' comments, as I think it was Claire that was reading off of the comments sheet. So there is a mix here. And one of the things that strikes me is I'm going through the documentation and looking at this stuff. The word safety keeps popping out at me. And it reminds me of another city that was battling infrastructure costs and water costs, a city in the state of Michigan. Mm-hmm. And they made a decision at, I think, the city council and city administrators level that kind of came back and bit them in a big way. And I do understand the folks that I talked to a couple Sundays ago. I knocked on doors, brought the survey to them, asked them to submit the surveys, had conversations with some of our citizens, and they are under income stress. Mm-hmm. And we know that. And we don't have an answer about the income stress. We have to do something in the city. We have to have a safe infrastructure. We have to have a livable city, as we keep talking about. But one of the things I was surprised by was that there were a couple of folks who were couples on fixed incomes who were retired who said, this is going to take money out of our pocket. But we've lived here for 35 or 40 years, and they had known that they didn't see their rates increase for this duration. So they expected at some point in time for something to happen. This is a fail point. I've been with the Public Works Director and his shop. I've been on the sites with his crew. I've looked at the infrastructure. I work in infrastructure. That's what I do for a living. It's a failed system. And it's not only failed, but we have our own staff, city staff, whom, by the way, I really, I'm an elected official. You can take shots at me all day, figuratively. And, you can call me every kind of name. We have a city staff that's dedicated, and I didn't appreciate a lot of what I saw on social media directed at city staff. I think that's just really kind of a cheap shot. But I'll leave that editorial comment right there. The city staff is working on systems. They're doing subterranean work where they're in danger. I've been to 2 emergency water main breaks. I think there was one up in Sherwood Forest. They had an electrical line laying over the infrastructure. This is just a system that is in not only disrepair, but it's unbelievable to somebody who works in this system or works in infrastructure. So I think Director Wynot has painstakingly taken a couple years to really figure out a way to make this as soft a landing as possible. We can't ignore this. I agree with the mayor. I agree with the councilors up here that feel we've got to do something, because we're starting to lose control of the issue, and the inflation is going to kill us on the cost side. So we've got to start beyond just the mandated minimum, and we need to be able to build up enough money so that we can basically do the infrastructure change that we need. Otherwise, we don't have value in the city. We're going to lose that value in the city. And I just, going out and talking to folks, I didn't get the impression from many of the folks I talked to, and I wasn't cherry-picking folks or going to people I knew. They were telling me that they were concerned. I did have folks who say, no, absolutely not. I don't want to pay another dime. I get that. but this is what we have. And to the mayor's point, if somebody has a golden ticket or whatever you want to call it, come and talk to us about it.
Yeah, we're listening. One comment was system development charges. Well, we didn't really have system development charges until just a couple of years ago. I think it was, what, $3,000 for a single-family residence, when most other cities it's in the $25,000 to $30,000 range. So we've done an evaluation. We've raised our SDCs to transfer some of that burden for the infrastructure onto new development. So we are turning over every rock. We are looking for solutions. People think federal funding's available. It's not. That financial stream has dried up. And if you think we're the only ones in this spot, you're kidding yourself. Every city is in the same position that we are. Sandy is raising their rates 97%. So if you think our little $14 bad, imagine 97% increase, and that's not where it's going to end. So, okay, we're taking responsibility. It's our fault. But it's our fault because now we have to find a solution to something that's been neglected for so long. Mm-hmm.
You guys keep talking about the $14. Is that what the council is recommending?
No, I just use that as an example.
Okay. So we're just, okay.
No, we haven't decided. Just using a number as an example. All right, guys, what would you like to do?
We can do a bond measure and send it out. Let them join. Decide.
Well, that is an option, but that would push it down further, and we need to get things fixed now.
What was that? I said we could do a bond measure and put it out there, but that would make...
Write it off on their taxes too, which is another issue.
Okay, so we pay the highest property taxes in the region, according to Mr. Bill Osborne, and now you're willing to put out another bond on top of that? Right now, before the school bond has horizoned out? I have a really hard time believing that the citizens are going to go for that. We have an issue of compression where we have a cap of what we can put on our taxes. So I just don't see where that's a feasible option. Maybe, again, after the school bond is horizoned out, but until then?
I would, yes, that was what I was going to say. I think we position ourselves with the school board to let them know when that sunsets, we would like to go out and bond for infrastructure. That's still 7 or 8 years out to do that. And that is a possibility, but again, it's an increase on people's property taxes, so they pay it there. If you do a revenue bond, you have to raise your utility rates to pay back the loan. And also I wanted to say, when there is grant funding available, we have captured it, just like on the Clarendon Street project.
Right.
So we share, and I commend you guys. Raising utility rates is one of the most difficult things for an elected official to do. It is not why you wanted to come into office. And in administration and in public works, we have very carefully tried to strategize how do we fix our failing infrastructure, because you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And we almost experienced that when we had to do our boil water notice. People were wondering why we weren't more prepared or why we aren't fixing our infrastructure. And it is difficult, and yes, we can improve our communication and how we're talking to people and outreach, and we will continue to do that. But we need direction so that we can come back at November 12th meeting and we're ready in January with the increase that we need to do. So what we're hoping to get tonight from you is, do you have a preference on A, B, or C? And then we would bring it back in November for you to consider for adoption.
And I want to clarify again the length of community outreach that we have done, and the fact that some people say they don't have enough information. Well, I can't control people that refuse to engage in our process, but we have been talking about this literally for years. It has been in our council packets. We have had meetings here every month, sometimes twice a month, sometimes more. So yeah, so we have tried, and if you refuse to engage in this discussion, then I'm sorry, but we can't do any more. Councilor Tracy.
The utility rates open house was noticed 4 times to the week prior of the actual open house on Nextdoor. So it was noticed 20th, 23rd, 24th, and I think there was a post notice on the 25th, so 4 times.
We contracted with a professional public outreach firm because we wanted to do this correctly, and we have had a thoughtful 2.5-year process with how we're communicating with the public.
Yep. All right, what would you guys like to do? We have 3 options. Kevin Johnson provided an option 4. I gotta get to the right page. Current 6805, option A approximately 7573, option B 8567, option C, which is 13316. Kevin Johnson's option was about 100.
And I was landing on B myself.
Okay.
And I wanted to, sorry, Director Wynot is going to come back with a less than 6 base unit, and that's still not within this. This is just the rate.
It's not going to affect the overall rate increase.
Right.
It's just going to restructure the water
Right.
so that some will pay a little bit less, some will pay a little bit more. Make
Maybe
it so that
regardless.
everybody's paying for what they use.
Okay, thank you.
I was meaning at D also.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion or further discussion?
Are we coming with a consensus, or what are we doing?
Make a motion to go with one of the options. I think that's the cleanest. Is that how you would like it? A motion on which option?
Yeah, if we have a general consensus that B is what you would like us to bring back to you in November, then we will prepare the information for you to consider formally adopting.
Okay,
And
so
we're
then-
also going to bring to you what our public outreach plan is going to be for communicating that to the public.
Okay, so you just want a consensus?
Yeah.
Okay, Councilor Ripley?
B.
Councilor Neese?
B.
Councilor Tracy?
B.
Councilor Reisner?
B.
Councilor Todd? B. Councilor Mercero?
B minimum.
All right, then the consensus is B.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Curious, I know I should come forward.
Yes.
Want me to come forward?
Yeah,
Well, we can hear it.
we need this to be, and then fill that out and make sure that Tammy has it.
I was just thinking, in looking at the numbers and what we need to do, because we must do this, is it less expensive not less expensive, where's the balance? Is it better if we raise our utility rates or go for a bond?
Yeah, well, we
Which-
can't go for a bond for a while.
Okay, well then there you
Yeah,
go.
we can't.
Thank you.
Things need to be fixed before 8 years. All right. Okay, so the next item is number 13, discussion of right-of-way, ROW information.
Hey.
All right, so this item was asked to be placed on a future agenda. We provided the city council with a packet of information mid-September. And basically what that was Managing the Public Rights-of-Way, which is a publication by the League of Oregon Cities. We put in a staff report from 2016 and the ordinance when the city council implemented the right-of-way ordinance. We also put in the management of Gladstone's most valuable asset, frequently asked questions, and we put in an ordinance that you approved to update back in December of 2018. So that was your background material. And then in your staff report that you have tonight, the Public Works Director and the Finance Director and I put in highlights of the information we feel you and the public needs to know. And so I'll have Kathy just go through a little bit on the difference between a franchise fee and the right-of-way ordinance.
So as you know, the franchise fees have been in effect for a very long time. And those are negotiated separately with each one of the utilities. I listed the contract dates, the terms, and the budget that we have. All of our franchise fees are a 5% fee that is assessed. Specifically for, with the franchise fees, we are able to take that into our general fund. It's used for parks, it's used for public safety, and administrative services of the city. We are not restricted in the use of that. So that is a franchise fee. The current row code does state in there, once franchise fee agreements expire, that they will come in under the row code. If that happens, then it would be administered for only row usage. My recommendation at that point in time when these expire would be that we correct the row code so that there is still the ability to use these franchise fees for general fund purposes, also to such parks. The row code, when that was instituted, that was for assessment of the utilities within the city that operate within the city. That 5% comes into the street maintenance fund and is allocated between streets, water, sewer, and storm now for improvements within the right-of-way. The money that is assessed within internally on city utility sales is not 5% above the rate, it's just a part of the rate, the current water, sewer, storm rates. We did not increase anything from that. We just utilize 5% of that for right-of-way improvements. Those were the major points that we wanted to try and clarify and make sure that there was a good distinction there.
Okay, so there's been quite a few people that have stated that we were charging ourselves the right-of-way fees, and that's not necessarily true. That's part of our charges. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Well, I would just like to add what this has done for the Public Works funds, the street fund, the water fund, sewer fund, and storm fund, is it's brought in approximately, in this next 2-year biennium, $636,000. That's what is right now coming into the funds to help maintain the right-of-way and basically chase down the PGEs and the Northwest Natural Gases and make sure that they fix things correctly and not leave holes. I mean, we've been trying to show a lot of this evidence in our monthly report of different instances where we're out chasing them down and requiring them to do things right. A lot of the issues with our infrastructure is, and not getting our life out of it, is the other entities that are digging around it and quite honestly being rough with our water, sewer, storms, and our street surface. So I just did some quick math, being this is following our rate study, or rate discussion last. Of that $636,000 over a 24-month period, if you divide that up amongst 3,433 accounts, if this was not in effect, we would have to raise those utility rates we were just talking about an additional $7.72 a month on average. So it really, it's these other entities that are helping pay for our infrastructure that doesn't even benefit Gladstone, for example, with Lake Oswego Tiger water pipe going through town. That nobody pays that. There's several others that are in that stuff where they're just passing through town as well. But just to do some rough math, that's kind of what this would mean, is we would lose about $636,000 over the next 2 years. And that's an estimate, of course. I mean, we're anticipating it to be higher, but we didn't want to put that in the budget because we don't know for sure.
See, one thing that we have added to the row code also too, as far as new revenues coming in, are the telecoms. And as that continues to grow, as different users pass through, Gladstone, again, it's not an impact to our Gladstone residents, but those we're able to assess a 5% fee on those also too.
And I think what we hear a lot of is the city has a privilege tax, which we don't, and Comcast is choosing to pass that fee on to its users and saying that it's the city that's imposing that, and they're choosing to do that. And I think that's the community struggle that they see with the cable companies. But it's not the city that's requiring them to pass it on to the users for that. So really what we wanted to be clear tonight is for you to understand that franchise fees that comes into the city is for our general services that we have. In regards to the right-of-way, we are at risk, if you rescind that, of losing about $636,000 for our current infrastructure. Public rights-of-way are city assets, and we should be managing who is in our assets, and they should be paying for that. And it does lessen the cost to the citizens, because if they're not paying that, we do have to raise our rates in addition to help recover those revenues.
Yeah, these are the revenues coming into our fund since this started now. So this is something that we've already factored in to our future rate increases.
So essentially, before, people were renting property that we owned by the conveyance of their the infrastructure, and we were not charging them a penny. So now we're just asking that they pay rent for our property that they're utilizing. So I know I would not be okay with somebody paying zero rent for a property that I owned. I'm sure nobody else would be okay with that either.
And it also helps fund us to track them down and make sure that when they dig up the street, that they are backfilling it correctly and they are compacting it and they are paving it right. We've got several incidences in our monthly reports where we go out and there's a big sinkhole. Well, somebody dug it up and they didn't even backfill it correctly. They undermined the road and stuff. And so we have a permit process now that these guys are held accountable, and this is how we're able to do that, is with this fund. So it's paying us to regulate them a little bit too, but now our infrastructure over time is going to not be in as bad a shape. For example, we're doing this brand new paving down here on Clarendon soon. The utilities can come in a year or two, and they could literally, without any oversight, they could dig that up and just literally destroy it. And then 10 years down the road, the street's a mess. And in the past, that was not ever looked at.
Councilor Tracy.
So when they do go subterranean into our infrastructure, director, why not? They notify you, don't they?
They do now.
Just come up and.
They do now. Yes. Yep.
So I was looking. One of the things that struck me is that Redmond, Oregon, which has a special place in my heart, $240,000 just for utility cuts. That's what they're expending apparently. $240,000 amount the city of Redmond, Oregon spends per year in addressing areas of early degradation caused by utility cuts in the asphalt. Now I'm assuming they're not allowing somebody to come in and do a major right-of-way project. I mean, I don't think we're probably talking about cutting miles of utility trench. Maybe they are, but I mean, $240,000 seems like a lot of money, and I'm guessing a lot of these things are probably service cuts from cable companies or whomever's running subterranean. That's a lot of surface area that's been cut and has to be patched. I mean, do you have an idea what we're chasing after the utilities that are using our right of way? Do you have any idea what
not in dollars right now? No, this is pretty new and I don't have that track as far as how many dollars we spend on cuts from other utilities.
Yeah, I mean, you're just coming back and trying to fix mistakes that they've made, or to your point, if they don't backfill with the proper,
right.
Aggregate mix.
If I was to guess, we are probably, time-wise, I would say in our street fund and our resources, we're probably spending 20% of our time dealing with this type of stuff, potholes and stuff, and it's literally, there's a utility under there. Typically the ground's mushy, it wasn't done right, and in a lot of cases there are places where the city just put paint over the dirt and that was the street. So there are those as well, but a lot of utility cuts, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Neese?
Didn't Westland just put something into place too, Westland, on that?
They are in the process of instituting their road code.
Because they hadn't done it before either.
Right.
Milwaukee, Oregon City, Tigard, Happy Valley, all cities are managing their rights-of-way through an ordinance now.
Okay. All right. So again, we're not the only one that's doing this. Okay.
Any more questions for staff? Because I'm sure we've got some public comments.
I do. I have a question. Where did the term privilege tax come from? Does anybody know? Because it's been thrown
It's
around
actually
a
on
lot.
the bill. It's
No, I know, but I mean, is that a Comcast thing? Is what I'm.
to make
How-
it look worse.
How often does Comcast then, once they've received, like, a company like that, receive the money, how often do they have to pay that to us? Is it quarterly?
Well,
Is it
Comcast pays us annually.
annually? So they're holding on to the money the whole time and
Collecting
No,
interest.
I do apologize. I believe Comcast Cable is quarterly, and then they also have various telecom
Okay.
subsidiaries too that come in on a quarterly basis. PGE is a annual payment that we receive
Okay.
there. So they hold on to that. The privilege tax, if I remember correctly, it was PGE was split out between 3.5% and 1.5%. Part of it was referred to as the franchise fee. Part of it was referred to as a privilege tax. Theoretically, it's just all a franchise fee.
And I think you remember back several months ago, the mayor met with Tim Goodman of Comcast and specifically said, quit passing this on to our ratepayers. And so we've tried to have those conversations, but that's what they do.
Councilor Tracy?
My question is, they're not making money on the money as they hold the money, are they?
I would have no idea on that, sir. I am
sure they
assuming
can.
they're
I'm
probably
sure they
collecting
How
it,
can they?
investing it. and-
So one point of clarification is, when you typically think about a privilege tax, you think about the hotel tax, like a transient lodging tax. That's a tax that is actually imposed on the consumer that the retailer, in that case the hotel, collects and then has a fiduciary duty to give that money over to the city. That's not what's happening here. What's happening here, as the mayor described it, the companies are being charged rent for the use of the city's right-of-way. They can pay that rent however they want. They're choosing to describe it as a privilege tax, but it's not a tax that's being imposed on the user, in this case, the Comcast subscriber. It's part of their business expense of running the business, and they're describing it to the user as a tax. But it's not a tax that the city imposes on the user. It's a fee for using the right-of-way that's charged to the company.
All right, public comment.
Bill Osborne.
Bill Osborne. First, let me point out you wouldn't be losing money that wasn't yours to take. You would instead be building trust, as this tax was one that was not needed, and just more a way to reach deeper into our pockets. I'd also like to remind everyone how this tax was adopted. While most meetings of the council are at 6:30, this one for some reason was at 5:30, and on a fifth Tuesday, not a normal day either. It was the only item on the agenda. It seems strange the council would sneak a meeting in. Not surprisingly, there wasn't any public comment at this meeting. The right-of-way doesn't belong to you, it belongs to the residents of Gladstone. You're not charging the big companies like Comcast and PG, you're charging us. This is why it's called a pass-through tax, because it gets passed along to the consumers, us. Even the city charges itself for using our own property and doesn't have the integrity to put it on the bill. The privilege tax is hidden on the water and sewer bill. This doesn't help us to trust you. I ask you to repeal this tax as it was implemented simply because it could be. This is the right thing to do to correct a wrong brought about by some who are no longer on this council. As far as the analogy of renting the space, could you imagine if PGE just said, well, you know, we're not going to pay rent, we're just going to cut power off to Gladstone. The city can make its own power. I mean, where would we be? You know, I understand the previous vote in the infrastructure. Again, I've talked to Public Works. I know what kind of condition it's in. I know we need to get about $100 million for that, and the increase will probably take about 100 years to do that. Yeah, and I get it, and I get why you guys voted the way you did. You know, we all benefit from that, and we can all see it needs work, and I understand it was a tough call. This one should be a little easier. I'm hoping that you will repeal this. At the very least, I'm hoping you will put it up to a vote of the people. I would also ask you adopt a new law to put any new taxes and fees to a vote of the people. And it's our money, it's our city, we should have a say-so. And I think giving power back to the people on things like that is the right thing to do. So, again, tonight, I'm hoping you will repeal the right-of-way fee or the privilege tax. At the very least, let the people vote on it. If they want to keep it, we keep it. The $600,000 that Jim Wynot was saying goes to Public Works. The stormwater fee that was implemented and is now $10, doubled after 1 year, brings in, I figure, about $600,000 a year, or should, figuring on 5,000 homes paying a utility bill in the city of Gladstone. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Claire Coy.
So I kind of feel like I touched on this when I talked before, but I would just like to basically say ditto to everything that Bill said. Thank you.
Thanks.
Kevin Johnson.
I better not.
No, get up here. We need to hear all sides. Come on, Kevin. Blast us.
It's really absurd. So Bill doesn't like the rate increase, and he's talking about the $600,000 from the stormwater fee, but the $600,000 from the right-of-way fee. So what's he want to double the sewer fee now all of a sudden? I don't quite understand it, but keep it.
All right, thank
you.
Next.
No others.
All right. Any more discussion? What would you guys like to do?
Do we have an action on this?
No, you don't
No,
have to
we're
do
just discussing
anything.
it.
It's just informational only.
Yeah, so do you guys want to take any action? Put it off? Talk about another time? What would you guys like to do? Councilor Tracy.
Well, there's a couple things that strike me. So, I'm not sure about the analogy, but you know, I've said this before. The utilities are playing citizens against the city. They through lobbying, they've never had to absorb this cost as a cost of doing business. It's been a pass-through. City attorney made me realize that when I was asking about whether or not they were banking the money and being able to earn money on the money, it's really their money. It's the rent they're charging the customer before they have to pay their own rent. So they can probably do whatever they want to on the investment side of this. To me, this is a non-starter conversation. I think we're at the point where we're finally kind of stabilizing the city and levelizing, and for us not to have the ability to be able to control the utilities and the potential damage that they can do to our infrastructure, which we have been speaking on for the last hour. You know, that ability alone is worth the cost, I believe. And you know, when you look at this, I think, you know, contact the Citizens Utility Board. If you don't want if you want them to absorb the rate, the utilities to absorb the rate and just basically build it into their business plan, they're going to raise your rates anyway. But contact the Citizens Utility Board. Tell them that these guys should be actually paying their freight, because what's happening is they're pitting us against our citizens. I understand that nobody wants to pay a privilege tax or a right-of-way fee, but it's the way that we maintain that asset. And if you do the deep dive into what the right-of-way fees or what right-of-ways are as assets, valued assets for the cities, we have to protect that. So I feel strongly about that. I don't have any inclination to change my position on it.
Anybody else?
I have no inclination.
Yeah.
No, you're
No.
not.
I can't.
Councilor Ripley, we're good? Councilor Reisner?
You leave it as is.
We're good. All right, thank you. Next is business carried forward. The first item is update on the library intergovernmental agreement, also called an IGA, with Clackamas County.
Great. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I have kept you appraised, updates and emails on how the negotiations for the IGA is progressing. And we have three. We have a facilities agreement,
a agreement to transfer employees and then the overarching IGA. And City Attorney Ashley Driscoll and I have been negotiating, and we have another meeting tomorrow. We are hoping to get that to you by the end of this month. So it's 20 pages for the IGA, so that you can start going through it. I also have told you that there's been a lot of vocal concerns about the timeline and funding because the Gladstone Planning Task Force is getting information that you guys are not getting yet.
Correct.
And what I wanted to give you specifically is I made a copy and I did a post note. Clackamas County Commissioners approved a $1 million contract with OPSIS to start the programming phase for master planning, Gladstone Library, Concord, Oak Lodge Library, and also NCPRD properties. The reason why I wanted you to have this is because Exhibit A has a very, very detailed scope of work of all the deliverables and meetings of what is going to be happening for the next year. So I'm going to have Tammy give that to you just so that you have it, so you understand that piece of it. I also wanted to ask you, the county last week, the county administrator and 2 county commissioners attended the planning task force meeting and did a presentation on their commitment to these buildings, and the program manager also talked about the timeline and the funding. They would like to afford you that same presentation, and so I need to call a special meeting so that you can just hear from Clackamas County on the timeline and also the funding for that. Are you one short? It's right here. I know it's going to be difficult to try to get everybody together, but next Monday night, the 14th, is when county administrator can attend the meeting. I know that's a Parks Board meeting night, but that is the only night that we can try to get that together. We can keep the Parks Board meeting here. We can meet at the Senior Center. We can meet downstairs. It would be at 6 o'clock, and it would be for the City Council to specifically hear from the program manager and the county administrator to kind of help you flesh out what some of these issues are you're hearing with the timeline.
Okay.
I want to do that before I give you the draft IGA, because it doesn't do me any good to give you a draft IGA if we can't flush out what the concerns are still. And I'm very confident we're almost there, and I think that we have a really good process in place. But what I wanted to ask you is the 14th a night that you guys could get together for a half hour, 45 minutes for a presentation?
I could, but then I'm going to head to the Parks and Rec Board meeting.
I had the Parks meeting on my schedule, I can do it, so.
Okay. So, that's what you have here, and that was my update on the IGA.
So,
all right.
There was a meeting Wednesday night in regards to the library, some task force or something to do with this up at the county. Was that recorded?
I don't think they do audio video. They have a very good website with all of their documents and minutes. They do have minutes recorded there.
Well, my understanding that is kind of fallen by the wayside according to our library board, but I'll take a look.
Okay. That what's fallen to the wayside?
Their ability to get things on the county website in a timely manner from the library district stuff.
You should contact them. You're our liaison.
So.
Yeah, I know that they transcribe the minutes. They have all the agenda materials. This that I gave you is where I got there. So if somebody's not finding anything, they should be contacting their chairperson on that advisory board to get that information.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else on library? Yes.
Will it be at the senior center, Jackie?
Well, I think we don't want to move the Parks Board meeting.
Can we do it? Is it downstairs?
I can do it downstairs at the
conference room. Or this other conference room over here?
That should be fine.
Okay.
But it is an open meeting, so if anybody wanted to come, they would be able to come to that.
Okay.
So we'll
Yes,
do that.
let's just have it here.
Okay.
So that kind of leads into my next city committee position. Specifically, I'll start with library, because the way that we advertised in the newsletter said that there was an intent to dissolve the existing library board, so we were not going to fill the 2 vacant positions. But as of yesterday, we have negotiated new language that you obviously haven't seen yet, that basically is allowing the Gladstone Library to continue a year after we transfer.
Okay.
And so I feel like that changes how we should recruit, and we should go ahead and recruit to fill those 2 positions at least for 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And in that year period, it may be that the Gladstone Library figures out what their future wants to be when they do dissolve. So that's new information that nobody had, and I wanted to share that with you. So if you're fine with it, I think we are going to go ahead and advertise to fill the 2 vacant library board positions.
Yes,
So-
please.
So when did we decide not to? Or that we were going to dissolve the library board?
We didn't. That's why I was saying that,
Why was that in the newsletter?
because that was the draft language in the IGA, and we were making an assumption, because we had been very vocal with the Gladstone Library Board. The library director has kept them appraised of negotiations.
Right. No, I've been,
So they,
together we've been there.
correct. So we didn't want to go and fill positions if you were going to dissolve them in December. That's why, because these are positions that start in January of 2020.
Okay,
Right,
so it's all
'cause-
good.
Well, my contention is we should always have a board, even if the county's running the library, because it's here in the city, and having a citizen group continue to represent us and advise us.
That's something that we can talk about at the
Yeah,
Monday
that's
meeting.
part of your negotiations with the IGA.
Okay.
Yep, so it's not a done deal.
Okay. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is we are currently recruiting for 3 positions on the Planning Commission that would be starting in January 2020. One of those is a vacated position now, and we didn't really advertise it to fill it now, but we got an application that said this is to fill the vacant Planning Commission now. So what I'm looking for guidance on you from is, do you want us to do a special noticing to fill the vacant Planning Commission vacancy that we currently have, or do you want us to just continue to collect applications and those will all be appointed in January? We can do either way.
I think it's October already. I think it's kind of ridiculous to just do it for the month and a half. Can we just wait till January?
I don't see a reason why we couldn't. I agree.
Does that make sense to you guys?
Do them all
Okay,
together.
Councilor Ripley, yeah?
I think do them all
So we'll let
together.
that applicant know that that will be considered to start in January
Okay.
2020. Okay. And then the other item is, the city administrator employment agreement expires December 31st, and I wanted to bring that to your attention.
Mm-hmm.
And the judge's contract expires December 31st. Those are 2 outside the city attorney. You have 3 that you oversee. And that's all I have.
Okay. All right. So next is business from the audience.
I have nothing.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. Business from the audience. All right, so next is business from the council. Councilor Mercero.
I have been as liaison working with the new fire chief and police chief, and I believe the direction is going in a positive way, and I think there's a lot of communication going out to the city, more than there has been in the past. And I know I appreciate being involved at this point to know that there are good things going.
Is that it?
That's it.
Councillor Todd.
I would just suggest that if anybody would like to be involved and really sort of know what the Public Works Department is dealing with, to go online and check out their monthly reports. It's my favorite part, actually. I love the pictures are really great. It really shows you what our workers are dealing with and what they're doing to fix things. I also love the code enforcement ones also from the police department. So it's every month. You can go on and you can look at them and find out a lot of information
from all the departments.
For all the departments. It's incredible. Those are my two favorite though.
Councillor Reisner?
Is it possible to also invite the library board to that meeting with the county on
Yeah,
that?
we can open it up to whoever
Right,
you want.
but-
I just hope spacing becomes a problem, but I think it should be the library board and the council, so.
That's right, yeah, so just, and they weren't mentioned as we were discussing that. Other than that,
Nothing?
happy Halloween, be safe.
Yay! Councillor Tracy?
So, last weekend, was at the League of Oregon Cities Conference in Bend. The mayor went as well, and City Administrator Betts. A lot of cities are dealing with a lot of the issues that we're dealing with. And we did meet with different folks and sit in conference seminars, trying to come up with creative solutions to deal with what we're all dealing with. So this pressure is not just on Gladstone. Gladstone is unique, but a lot of the smaller cities in the state especially are really struggling as well. So it wasn't a commiseration, it was just really trying to share ideas. And we did make some contacts, and hopefully we can chat with those folks to see what their successes are and how they got there. Okay, that's it.
Councillor Neese?
Kiwanis is doing an open house on October 29th at the Bomber at 6 o'clock. I invite you to come and check out Kiwanis, and you might want to become a member.
Councillor Ripley?
I don't have anything.
All right. First, Halloween's coming up, obviously, October 31st, and everyone's invited to our Halloween Spectacular on Portland Avenue. It's going to be bigger and better than ever. So if anybody wants to put up a booth, we have space. If somebody wants to do trunk or treat, we've got space for that. Food, we've got a band, we've got the Franken Band. I think there's going to be a beer garden, there's going to be food. The Fresh Pressed Cider guy's still going to be there this year. It's going to be awesome. And everybody has to be in costume. We have the committee and liaison appointments coming up. So do we have an attendance spreadsheet on who goes to what meetings and how often? Do we have some people that are missing an awful lot of meetings? Or do I need to go back through all of the...
You mean for the elected officials?
For
or
the committees. Because we
Okay.
have 2 or 3 people that are up on every single one of our committees. And I was just trying to go back and look at if we have some people that just aren't as interested and aren't showing up, or if the attendance seems to be pretty high across the board. And if you don't have that, that's fine. I'm more than happy to go back through the agendas and the meeting minutes and do that for myself.
The only, I can think of 2 that are close to missing 3 meetings, but the chairs of those, the staff chairs of those committees usually keep us appraised if there's an issue.
Okay, so if there's people that are missing a lot of meetings, could you just let me know?
Yeah.
Okay, and then also the liaisons, we know who's showing up for what meetings. That's part of the minutes, so I can look at that too, because that's one of the things we reevaluate every year is the liaison appointments. And then there's harassment training coming up. You'd mentioned to me, but I wasn't sure the dates and times and if that's something you'd like us to participate in.
It's for the city employees, and I believe I mentioned it in my weekly report, and I think it's the 15th?
15th.
Yep, and there's a 10 to noon and a 1 to 1:30 to 3:30.
Okay, so could any of us sit in on it if we wanted to?
It's a volunteer, anybody can do that, yes.
Okay, and then we have diversity training or something like that that's coming up in, no, I knew we had some other kinds of training that were kind of required. We didn't have a diversity one, okay. All right, well, that's all that I had. Would somebody like to make a motion?
Can I ask
yes.
clarifying? So, what action do we need to take on the judge's contract and city administrator's contract? Or do we have to call it for the next meeting, or do we go into a review? Attorney?
Do you want me to answer that?
Oh, sure, sorry.
No problem. Chad Jacobs from the City Attorney's Office. Yeah, you don't have to do a review. You can just renew the contract. If you wanted to do a review, that's certainly within your discretion to do that. You know, one of the things you want to think about, just given the timing, is whether and to what extent you want to do a renewal. I believe, certainly the City Administrator's contract, I believe it may be in the judge's contract as well, is that there's a notice time period if you weren't going to renew. And so that, I think it's like a 6-month renewal period. And so with that, giving that notice, obviously there's an intent or an implied intent that you were going to renew that contract. And if you don't do that, then there's basically some severance payments that you would make. So, you know, that's sort of where we're at. And you would, you know, if you want to renew it, you could just do one of two things. You could have a discussion with the city administrator and the municipal court judge, or you could just delegate that duty to one person, you know, such as the council president or the mayor, to say, why don't you go sit down with them, talk about what they want, and then that person could bring it back to the council for their consideration. So there's a lot of flexibility, is what I'm trying to say, in a very long-winded way late at night.
No,
so I'm
that's
sorry.
good.
The next agenda.
I just wanted to
Yeah,
find out what process
we'll make
was.
sure that's on the next
All right.
agenda.
Thank you, Chad.
Okay. Somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion was made by Counselor Neese, seconded by Counselor Tracy. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned at 9:17 p.m.
This is